The time is 3 o'clock. I'll just check and see if we are live. Wait for a thumbs up at the back oh, we are. Okay. I never know who to look at. All right. So I will call the Tuesday, July 5th regular council meeting to order. And we now begin with a land acknowledgement that the city of Fort Saskatchewan is located within Treaty 6 territory and Métis Nation of Alberta Region 4, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Nihilwak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis, and we acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. It is because of our treaty relationship that we can live, work, and play on Treaty 6 territory. Thank you. So, we will have Councillor Abatoy is expected to join us virtually in a little bit. With that, we are ready to begin. So the first item that we have is a approval of the June 28th regular council meeting minutes. Councillor Harris.
Your Honor, I would move that the minutes of Tuesday, June the 28th, 2022 council meeting be approved as presented and circulated.
Thank you. Are there any errors or omissions? Not seeing any. I will close the motion. Please cast your vote. Thank you. And that is carried. The next item that we have is delegations, and we have 6 that are pre-registered. So we will go in order of how each person has registered. So when I invite you up to the front, you may come up into the speakers area here just in front of us, and each one will have 5 minutes. So Doug Eastman, you are first. And Ms. Exley will be setting the timers, so you can just state your name, which item that you're talking about, and then she will start the timer. Just push your button there. There.
Hi, my name is Doug Eastman, and I'm here to chat about the Greenfield Way traffic calming issue. I'm a resident along Greenfield Way across from the soccer fields and Henderson Park. My wife and I have lived there for a couple of years now. I previously submitted to Council some of the observations and a couple of my PowerPoints as well. I'm going to try and attempt to share some of my feedback, maybe jumping the gun a little bit. I wasn't quite sure how this is supposed to work, but on the Greenway traffic calming implementation document that's attached to this meeting that I think Grant is presenting later. I'm going to provide feedback to that rather than my original PowerPoint. So the issues I have, how do I change this? Just enter. Okay. So I kind of broke the issue up into a couple parts. Traffic volume being the first one I wanted to chat about, and just the observation we've made on the heavy traffic as well as normal vehicle traffic and how it's increased exponentially. And some of that heavy equipment is construction vehicles, dump trucks, excavators, cement trucks, pump trucks, landscapers, everything like that associated with construction. And the traffic from Dillingham Avenue and now especially from the Meadowview area where the new zero lot line development is being made, and the one you guys are going to talk to about today, the South Fort Meadow Stage 9 development. All that development is directly linked to Greenfield Link. That traffic from there is what's driving really high traffic increase in the area I live and on Greenfield Way. And it's been since that link, Greenfield Link, has been opened up to Meadowview Drive. People are shortcutting through there to wherever they got to go, I guess, within the city. With the increased traffic, We're seeing more speeders, more noisy vehicles, increased traffic accident potential, more traffic violations, not stopping at stop signs, increased danger to pedestrians that have to use the roadways to access the city path or their mailbox because there's no sidewalks along Greenfield Way. The traffic for these new areas, I always thought would be supported within a road network within their subdivision. South Fort Estates has a road network to support South Fort Estates. Meadowview should have its own roadway to support that whole subdivision. But it doesn't seem to be the way it's setting up with the development south that is all connected to Greenfield Link. The traffic speed I'm not going to dwell on. I think you guys have seen enough data regarding the speeds of 65 when it was 60. So I'm not going to dwell on any of that, but I'll just make an observation that since it's been 40 kilometers per hour, my observation on Greenfield Way in my specific section, there's been no change in the driving habits. I don't see that has significantly slowed or changed anybody's speed behaviors.
You have 1 minute.
I'm going to comment then on the report. First, I'd like to talk about collectors. I've heard a lot about a collector roadway. A collector roadway, I don't know what the specification is for Fort Saskatchewan. If there is one, I'd sure like to see it, because to call something a collector just based on traffic isn't probably a safe way to go, because how do you build it? The proposal that's within the report doesn't include anything to reduce the volume of traffic on Greenfield Way. So when you see the proposal, you'll see that there's no volume control. They talk about raised crosswalks, but the specification for that isn't clear. How fast is that going to control the traffic? If I can speed over that at 50K, it's just a waste of the city's money. So it's critical to understand when they go to raise crosswalks, how high.
Okay, your time is up. So what I can do is see if there is questions of council to you. So I will open it up for questions of council. Go ahead, Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thanks for being here today, Mr. Eastman. My only question then is, are there any components of the proposed traffic calming concept that you are in strong agreement with?
I had, last slide was feedback on the current proposal. The current proposal is a great improvement from what was tabled before. My personal preference would be to limit the traffic from Dillingham and Greenfield Link, but understanding if that isn't possible, then the speed bumps was something that we were kind of hoping for, at least in the section between Greenfield Link and South Fort Drive. We're in front of the soccer fields. We were hoping, or I was hoping that we might see that. Pending those, the raised crosswalks are a good idea. A few small tweaks like moving the solar speed indicator sign on Greenfield Way up to that section where everybody seems to race from Greenfield Link to the light would be a plus. I'd also mentioned something about painting lines on Greenfield Way to make it look narrower and maybe tame the traffic down a little bit. But basically the speed bumps in that section that is supposed to be 30, actually, there's a playground sign there, it's supposed to be 30. It is not. Something in that section would be key, and I do like the raised crosswalks that is mentioned in the proposal. It goes a long way to show that there is commitment, and we appreciate that. Anything that can be done in that section would be awesome with the development.
Okay. Councillor Nguyen, did you have any more questions?
No, that's it. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Harris, questions?
Yeah, thanks for your comments. Appreciate it. I was involved when this subdivision was approved because I worked with the city at the time. And everything you're saying resonates in so many different ways. The question I've got for you is, it seems to me like you're prepared to work with the city as we implement these changes, monitor these changes to see if we can affect positive change. Is that a fair assessment that I've taken from your presentation?
I'm proposing solutions to help
Okay.
the situation. I agree 100%. And I'd like to continue to work with the city and provide feedback. That's why some of the things I've thought about in here may possibly help if you do review the document. I didn't have time to go through it all.
Yeah, and I think your comments are well taken. This council obviously wants to find a solution to this problem, and it's not an easy fix. But I think if we're moving in the right direction, which I took from your comments, you would work to support as far as we can take it and see how it goes. And that's what I was curious about. Thank you.
And my biggest fear is that the development there is exponential too. So the problem here associated with this is only going to get worse. So the time to be doing something is now. And
Okay, thank you. I've just got one question for you. You made some comments on the other ones. Coming off Dillingham, though, if the recommendation isn't to close it, and I know that would be a preferred by most, they're talking about using the bulbs and things. Is there something more that should happen, as you're exiting or right at the Dillingham intersection that would be more plausible?
you thought the bump outs you're talking about?
Yeah, the bump outs.
The one at Dillingham, I'm not 100% sure that the traffic problems there are as bad as the ones on Greenfield Link, and how much worse they're going to get where Greenfield Link comes on to Greenfield Way, because that's a T intersection that's tight. There's a mailbox, there's a path right there. Everything is really congested. I'm curious to see how the bump out is going to manufacture itself there. It'll be a huge help to slow people down and stop to make that turn, because it'll be a very busy place to make a turn.
Okay, well, thank you for coming out. We will be discussing this later in the agenda. All right, so you're welcome to take a seat. And we will go to the next person, Candace Billick, who is attending virtually. So welcome, Candace. And Miss Exley will be putting a 5-minute timer on.
Do you have, can you hear me okay? My volume?
Can you turn it up?
Okay.
Miss Exley, just don't start her until she, can
you hear me now?
We can hear you now, okay?
Okay, that's great. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Candace Billick. I'm a resident of Fort Saskatchewan since 2009. All of those years I've lived on Greenfield Way. I did speak at the February 2022 council meeting, and I'm here again to speak about the ongoing safety concerns on Greenfield Way related to speed, volume, and behavior of drivers in this area. Since February 2022, my husband and I have submitted a number of other incidents that have occurred through a narrative, through email, through phone calls. We've included the city manager, bylaw, RCMP, engineers, city councilors, and yourself as a mayor. And, they do surround still the safety concerns of pedestrians, first and foremost. Our own children were narrowly missed by a driver who thought it was okay to swerve and weave on this road, and did face some consequences, but certainly it is a very scary space, and it's hard to just let your children walk from bus stops and cross this road knowing that it's uncontrolled. The question about how Greenfield Way is defined, and Doug brought this up, maybe that's the problem here, is that it's defined as a collector road and not as a local road to service the adjacent properties. Fleet Facilities and Engineering did provide the opportunity for engagement on traffic calming measures on June 9th, and that flyer style paper questionnaire was circulated in advance, and there was a number of us that voiced our concerns and filled out the questionnaire. One of the things that was highlighted was a pedestrian zone, and my concern around that was that it actually spoke to parking rather than the foot traffic and addressing that in particular. The raised crosswalks were named, but also most importantly, and I think a really easy quick win here would be adding those flashing lights, and it was earmarked to have that there, but it certainly hasn't happened yet. Also having some more painted markings, as Doug mentioned, on either side of the road would be helpful. Perhaps, really indicating some pedestrian walking paths. The other really easy, I think, quick win would be to join the walking path on the park side, where you have soccer fields, you've got a park already, you've got the high school at the end of the block. It would not actually, I don't think you'd see costs incurred other than to put in that pathway because the workers who maintain it already do the whole loop and go actually on Greenfield Way to clean it. And so I think, that is something that would be a quick win and something that would be safe. Lane delineators were really not something that we all were really sold on because 8 months out of the year we have winter driving conditions. So I'm concerned about how they would be maintained and if they would actually stay intact, to be honest. And this is an estates neighborhood. I don't think that would be particularly attractive to see all these things sticking up and all over the place. So I think the other piece too is, I learned other people shared my sentiments during this engagement, and it was really reassuring to hear from other residents who actually had experienced close calls. And sad at the same time. It was disheartening to know that they'd come to years of city council meetings and we're still in this place. We need something to happen. As Doug said, we've already talked about the limited speed limit and lowering that. I haven't seen a change in behavior either. As Councillor Kelly had mentioned in previous meetings around the 3,500 vehicles, if we knew that that's the number of vehicles that we'd be passing by our properties every day, would we have chosen to live here? I'm not sure about that. Also, I just want to outline the strategic plan for the city, and the core value was a vibrant, thriving community. I think the word that was missing there is safety. We cannot live our core value if we don't feel safe in the community we live in. And so first and foremost, that's what I'm advocating for. I'm not worried about the nuisance. I'm worried about safety, injury, and death of residents. Solutions. I'm looking at speed bumps with an effective height, as Doug had mentioned, not a rolling height, starting from 215, going to 243 Greenfield Way to start, and then beyond there. I'd like lighted crosswalks along Greenfield Way, wherever there's crosswalks, raised crosswalks, extended walking path, other physical barriers, closure of roads. I really just want us to do better because we know better, and I would like these things enacted now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to questions of council. Councillor Harris?
How long have you lived in your place in the estates?
Since 2009.
2009. What attracted you to that subdivision, if you don't mind me asking?
It was actually the appeal of having that rural feel of being on the acreage, but having the city amenities close by, and also being on city water. Those kinds of things are very attractive, especially to young family, and not, and obviously having cleared roads, and like I said, not being so far out that you're completely isolated, but certainly having the space between the houses, that slower feel to it really was the appeal.
So my question to the last presenter was, are you prepared to work with the city as we implement these changes, should they get approved tonight, to try it as the first step to get to hopefully a better place of safety, which you've made reference to? So, I'm just curious, we have to do something. So I'm curious if the residents recognize that it's a difficult situation. So we've got some recommendations, and I'm just curious about your ability to support it going forward and see how it works. And if it doesn't work, obviously we'll have to revisit if that's the case. And that's okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I will stay engaged and I will stay involved and work with the city.
And I sense everybody's of that same mindset with these concerns, and we're going to try to hopefully find a solution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the only question I have, I assume you've reviewed some of the recommendations that are coming forward this evening, which include a trail link from South Fort Boulevard up behind the sports field there. Okay.
I've reviewed some of them, not all of them, but I've certainly reviewed the reports.
Okay. No, I just wanted to make sure because I know you mentioned that one, and yet that's one of the ones that has been put in there. So basically, we're just kind of looking for if there's something more that, and I guess we're just looking to see if there's something more that you feel like we're missing that, we haven't addressed right now, but this is a first step. So.
Yeah, certainly I would say the flashing lights at the crosswalk, because it is kind of a blind, as you come around, it kind of does, sway, like the road does kind of curve here and there, and having those flashing lights, I think would help alert drivers that there are people walking, because the foot traffic is increasing, which is wonderful. I'm glad to see people are active, but it's also very scary to see these kids trying to cross.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much for coming online tonight, Candace. We will be discussing the recommendations a little bit later in the meeting, so thank you. All right. The next individual who is registered is Ken Laura. So if you'd like to come forward. Because you can't speak after, so you, okay. Okay, so you're passing Cindy Fermanuk. So once again, you all also have 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when you're at 1 minute. Just push the button on the mic.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor Catcher, City Council members, and all others present. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about the issues that are happening on Greenfield Way with the traffic concerns that we have. My husband Fred and I live at 157 Greenfield Way. This is the corner lot where Greenfield Way and Dillingham Avenue connect. We have lived there for 8.5 years. We retired from our life on the farm and purchased this estate lot because at the time we felt it would provide us with a country-style environment while still allowing us to have the amenities of groceries, hospital, pharmacies, lab services, and shopping desirable in our retirement years. After moving into our beautiful new custom-built home, problems with traffic issues of speeding and noise along with the pedestrian safety became evident. These problems greatly escalated when the South Point area and South Point School were built and Dillingham Avenue was extended into those areas. The volume and speed of vehicle traffic is an issue, and this is compounded by the noise created by the types of vehicles traveling on Greenfield Way and Dillingham Avenue. The high volume of noise is created by construction and delivery vehicles, school buses with loud engines. Not sure why those engines are so loud. Maybe the DEF has been removed, but I cannot speak to that because I don't know for sure. Motorcycles that are revving and vehicles with loud mufflers. Problems also include garbage being thrown in our ditch, the vandalism of our vinyl fence. We had panels that were kicked out 2 days in a row. People are shortcutting driving and riding bikes through our driveway. In an effort to reduce traffic noise, we had 3 windows removed from our house from the wall that faces Dillingham Avenue. We had the space built in, a soundproof drywall installed inside the house. We had the stucco on the outside re-stuccoed, and now that doesn't match. We have 3 squares not matching. And it's disappointing that after all of this expense and mess, we have very minimal reduction in the noise that's occurring with this traffic. I was recently hospitalized on a Wednesday, required surgery, and was released on Thursday with instructions to get proper rest. I had a very difficult time resting up and just put up with the noise for the Friday and the weekend, but finally feeling totally frustrated, I called into City Bylaw to complain on Monday. Police do patrol in our area, but it's unreasonable to expect them to be staying there all day. There are other more priority issues that I'm sure that they have to deal with. Another safety issue is the condition of the crosswalks in this estate lot area. Vegetation has overgrown, visibility is poor. We're aware and proceed very slowly, but others drivers that may not be familiar with the area speed through. Crosswalks should be brightly marked or have flashing signals, and vegetation should be cut back. I've seen the neon color pedestrian signs in cities like St. Albert and Sherwood Park, and even the small town of Morinville. And for some reason, I don't know why Fort Saskatchewan has not implemented this. Safety issues are a concern due to no sidewalks in this estate lot area, so pedestrians are therefore walking, children are on bikes, scooters along the street. Drivers of vehicles speed, rev engines repeatedly and intentionally when we are out visiting with our neighbors, taking out our garbage, or doing our yard work. When looking for an estate lot, nowhere did we see this type of planning of roadways and land use. The other estate lots we looked at were created as a separate entity within the city or the city limits, and with access for people who have a residence there and for occasional visitors to the area.
You have
There
1
were
minute.
no collector roads.
1 minute.
I feel the city has devalued our property by allowing these through roads and allowing the developers to build duplexes and small single family lots close to our estate lots. I can foresee issues with traffic, noise, and safety escalating when South Point is developed further due to the influx of people. I believe issues of sleep deprivation, along with the annoyance and aggravation caused by the traffic volume and noise, are detrimental to our health. We should not have to be dealing with these types of problems in our retirement years. I feel strongly that all these issues could have been at least reduced or avoided had the city planned the estate lots in a common sense and logical manner. Now, due to poor planning, we have these problems to deal with, and to somehow find a solution to these problems and correct this. I cannot understand why 2 major collector roads were built through the estate lots, along with 2 schools, soccer and football fields, playgrounds, all of which are congested in an area and are contributing to this high influx of traffic. We do pay higher taxes. Yes, we have a larger property, but it's quite disappointing. We take pride in keeping our home and yard well maintained, cannot enjoy our space because of traffic noise when people in duplexes and single family homes in our area are enjoying quieter space along with less maintenance and lower taxes.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. I've allowed you an extra 30 seconds.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I will open it up to questions of council.
Okay.
Councillor Harris, question?
Just a clarification, do you live on the north side of Dillingham, at that intersection? South side? Oh, okay, south side. Yeah, I'm looking at an aerial map. So yours is on the south side.
Yes, it's where Dillingham and Greenfield meet.
And you've got a garage in the back.
Yes, we do.
Backing out onto that walkway area. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to get
Okay,
a
that's
sense
fine.
of where you are. Okay,
That's fine.
thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Nguyen?
Yeah, thanks for your presentation today. I certainly appreciate your frustration. We can hear it in your voice. I just wanted to get kind of a time frame reference to put it in perspective for me about when you purchased your home and moved in. Was there development beginning at that time behind in the South Fort area beyond Dillingham Avenue, and also were you aware at all of any area structure plan or development plans for that neighborhood?
No, there was nothing. We had an empty field behind us, and there was talk of them building the South Point School at that time, but we didn't know how long that would take.
Right. Okay. So that wasn't your knowledge at the time when you purchased. So.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got a similar question to that. And I asked this because I was on council when the subdivisions were being approved behind your area. Mm-hmm. So when you moved in, did the area structure plan at that time show a connector road, Dillingham?
Dillingham was not completed. It was extended after the duplexes on the one side were built. But the plan may have, but unfortunately we did not look that far into it because it was the type of lot we were looking for, the setting with the morning sun in the east and the evening sun in the west, which to some people maybe that's not important, but to us coming from the farm it was. And also because there was the open field behind us, and we had a vision of estate lot living, of not being all this busy traffic area. So we didn't check into the development plans for that at the time. It was a lot that suited, like we wanted to be in that area.
Okay, so then my next question that I have for you, because I have spent a lot of time out there talking with your neighbor across the street, because it is a big, wide, gaping intersection. So they're talking about bump outs, but what more do you feel needs to be done with that specific area? Because the gentleman who talked before, he lives on the other end of Greenfield, and you live on this end, so you have different concerns. So what's your recommendation? Like, what more should be done?
I would personally like to see Dillingham Road close up to the point right behind our property, and then extend Durand Bend to join up with Southridge Boulevard. And then those people can use Allard Way or go all the way around whichever other way. I think these Greenfield Way and these roads in the estate lots should be only for people that are living there or have visitors, not for all this through traffic and connecting. And I realize every city is in their unique situation of having to create roadways, but I definitely feel that that's what's causing the problem here. The influx, all this building going on, these cars have to go somewhere. And so they're shortcutting through these areas. Plus, like, there are no traffic lights there, so it's faster for them to cut through and go like, say, shortcut through there instead of going all the way around.
Okay, Councillor Nguyen, a question?
Yeah, and then again, just further to that, in the traffic calming concept that we're going to be seeing and discussing later, are there any measures that you're in strong agreement with? I've asked another presenter this, that for the purpose of traffic calming, or do you see them as a hindrance to the lifestyle and to be able to use your roadway properly in an estate area?
I don't see them really as a hindrance. I just see them more as a Band-Aid solution. Like, I don't think that that's going to deter the amount of traffic that's coming through there.
Okay. So closing off those roadways is your ideal solution, as you mentioned.
To me, that would be the ideal solution, but I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I think, like, it may deter some people. It may deter some of the revving and speeding around, but there's
Volume
all
is the
this
main
traffic
issue.
that needs to go somewhere, and it's coming through our area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for coming out this evening.
Thank you.
All right, the next individual pre-registered is Vance Major. Welcome. You also have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Vance Major, and I'm here to talk about the increased traffic and safety issues on Greenfield Way. My family moved into 149 Greenfield Way in 2014. Not long after moving in, we began to notice that drivers were driving with extreme rates of speed and no regard for pedestrian safety. My son at the time, who's here with me today, was 7 years old, was honked at, sworn at, nearly run down on numerous occasions, and has been given the middle finger for riding his bike down the side of the street. At that time, my wife took it upon herself to petition the city of Fort Saskatchewan to highlight what was going on traffic-wise on our street. After about a year of discussions, emails, phone calls, the city put signs that say, and I quote, "Please watch for pedestrians on roadway." These signs are extremely small, are easily missed, and the city ought to be ashamed of themselves for the size of these signs. But at least it's something. These signs are approximately 8 inches high by 12 inches wide. They're very small, they're yellow, the writing is very small, and I know where they are, and I still miss them. Fast forward 8 years and the creation of Sienna and South Point. Since these neighborhoods have opened up, the traffic on Greenfield Way has increased by at least 50 times of what it was 8 years ago. My son, who is now 15, still gets honked at, sworn at, given the middle finger, and nearly ran down on a daily basis. But as you can imagine, he's not that 7-year-old anymore, and he is not afraid to express his frustration back to those drivers.
And I'm still sick and tired of it.
Okay, and a point of order, you're not allowed to do that in here, okay? But I understand your frustration. Go ahead.
Our street is used as a racetrack, a bypass road, and a detour road to avoid the traffic lights on Southfort Road. Dillingham Avenue between Greenfield and Allard Way is used as a drag strip on a regular basis, with no regard for the stop sign at the intersection of Dillingham and Greenfield. One of the issues on our street is it is very rare that we actually see drivers come to a stop at the intersection between Dillingham and Greenfield Way. I would estimate that approximately half of the drivers that blow the stop sign are doing close to 30 kilometers an hour while going through the intersection. Another issue is the total lack of respect for your neighbors, and some of the drivers on motorcycles, the louder cars and trucks decide that it's a great idea to do brake stands and just rev their engines, which echoes through the neighborhood. I have one neighbor who has actually had to remove windows from his house to try and cut down on some of the noise. This is totally unacceptable and should not have been allowed to go this far. Another issue with our street is some of the drivers refuse to follow the speed limit or just don't care about the speed limit. Also, there are drivers out there who just don't care about pedestrian safety. People in crosswalks are being honked or swerved at. People walking on the side of the road are being sworn at because these drivers feel they have the right to drive their vehicle at whatever speed they feel with no regard for public safety. I know of issues of where people driving down our street and the occupants of the vehicle being thrown out due to driver doing donuts or whatever stunt, the occupants being taken to the hospital. I haven't heard of anything like this happening anywhere else in town. The lack of police enforcement doesn't help the situation. Again, as pointed here, I know police can't be on our street every waking moment of the day. There's other things going on. But when there is a officer that does do a tour, it's mid-morning. I'm sorry, but does nothing. Mid-morning is not the time to come through Greenfield Way. I've offered my driveway for officers to come and do just to monitor traffic, and I think they're just scared of writer's cramp because they'll write their tickets that they need for their monthly quota.
Okay, you've got 1 minute.
I have personally witnessed drivers going around the intersection of Dillingham Avenue and Greenfield Way sideways. Drivers come onto our streets just to do donuts and burnouts. I have seen drivers who are doing well over 90 kilometers an hour on our streets. It's not hard to tell who lives on Greenfield Way and who doesn't, as a driver who will tailgate you or pass you while driving down the street just to turn down Dillingham Avenue. I have called the police in regards to people passing on a single lane street, and I was passed, and police said there is nothing they can do. Again, speed limits don't seem to apply to certain people. I have read the proposed options for speed control, and they don't go far enough. I firmly believe the best option is to have the road between Dillingham Avenue and Allard Way to I firmly believe the best option is to have the Dillingham Avenue onto Allard Way to Southridge Boulevard put in as a top priority, and the intersection between Greenfield Way and Dillingham be permanently closed. I also believe that speed bumps are a must, but not just at crosswalks, as the space between each crosswalk is quite far and a car can reach quite high speeds between these crosswalks. I don't agree with putting lines on the road because it's going to narrow that road up, and again, as mentioned here before, it's going to trying to keep that maintained in the wintertime is going to be very, very hard.
Okay, you're at your time now, so I will open it up for questions. Councillor Macon.
Thanks for being here today, Vance. Vance, what is your son's name?
His name is Evan.
That's me.
I see that, Evan. I just wanted to...
I'm kind of sick and
Okay,
tired
Evan.
of
Okay,
being
okay, Evan, you're not allowed.
in trouble.
Evan, can I make a comment? I just wanted to say, I know it's hard to be in here and watch when other people are saying when you're not allowed to come up and say it, but I'm just so grateful that you're here today and with your dad and supporting your family and trying to make changes. And I think we've got some great ideas coming forward. But
Okay,
but thank you, Evan, for being here. I can tell that you're passionate about it, and I appreciate it.
okay,
Thanks, Vance.
okay, Evan. Okay, Evan.
Evan.
Okay. Just, yeah. Okay. Okay. Before you leave, Vance, so you live close to the Dillingham
I
side?
live one house street north of the Dillingham Avenue.
Okay. And I have spent a lot of time over there to look and see what's going on, and I understand that intersection.
Yeah.
When did you move in?
I moved in June 26th of 2014.
2014. Okay. Okay. And so your recommendation, though, is close the street, or alternatively, if the street isn't closed, is there another traffic calming measure that would, like more speed humps to slow them down coming, or what, just what's...
On that intersection, I don't know what you could do to stop somebody from going around that corner doing 30. And if you were to come there and sit there and realize and take a look at what happens, I would say that more than half of what goes through that intersection does 30 or close to that. And there are people that come around that corner sideways.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
Okay. And I'm just, because we're going to be discussing this, I'm looking for if there's something more than just the bump outs for there. I have actually sat and talked with your neighbor that's right across from Dillingham on several occasions and witnessed what goes on. So I'm looking for solutions that potentially are not in this, if there's something more.
I don't know what, I haven't thought of anything myself. I don't know what you could do at this point to try to slow traffic down there. A stop sign's obviously not it. A speed bump on that corner, it may slow people down, but if you're going to put one on Greenfield and Dillingham, you got to have it fairly substantial just so that it slows people down. I don't think putting a light there is going to be acceptable. We're in a part of my appeal with moving there is what was said earlier, the country feel within the city. That was the feature that brought me here.
Okay.
I moved there with small kids, and I like the idea of being in the country feel within the city. But in the last 8 years, we are now right in the middle of Fort Saskatchewan, not in the country.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I really appreciate you coming out. I know our general managers were all sitting there taking notes as you're speaking. So we have our general manager, protective services, and infrastructure. So I know they are taking notes as people are talking as well. So I do appreciate you coming out and bringing your son so that he can see a little bit of the democratic process as well.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
you. Marcel Van Heck, you are next to be registered. And you will also have 5 minutes. I think you have to push your button. Yeah, there you go.
Madam Mayor, respected councillors, thank you. I'm not going to dwell on the problems on Greenfield Way because I think they've all been addressed. I spoke to many people along Greenfield Way, and I have sympathy for your position because the variance of opinions is just about as great as the number of people that live on there. The traffic is horrendous, and I believe Dillingham was an amendment to the original structure plan for Greenfield Way. So it was kind of an afterthought to allow the next subdivision to continue. And I believe that traffic coming off of there is really congesting Greenfield Way. I sat at the corner of where Fred and his wife, she spoke, live, and I was chatting with a couple of the neighbors, and I counted 9 out of 10 cars are going down Dillingham. So my proposals are rather two-stage, and I think our first thing and it wouldn't cost the city a lot of money, but temporarily close down Dillingham before Greenfield Way at the walkway, and maybe some of the traffic patterns will change if you do it for 6 or 8 months. It wouldn't cost the city any money, and it would, I think, would help. The other thing is that 92nd possibly could be open temporarily till that area there gets built out, because a lot of our problem is until that area gets built out, Greenfield Way is gonna take most of the traffic, mostly because it's a thoroughfare. Like it's way quicker. If I live on 200 Greenfield Way over by Henderson Park, and if I get onto Greenfield Way off of South Fort Drive on just after Allard Way and drive around, I can get to my house quicker than if I go down South Fort Drive and in the other way. I don't normally go down Greenfield Drive that often, but you can appreciate what's going on a little bit when you do that. And I think if you do this temporarily and see what happens to alter some of the patterns without traffic commerce and all of that are okay. The problem with them are, with a large traffic flow like this, you need to put 4 lanes on there. Councillor Harris already said, I got a suggestion for you, Marcel. We'll make that a 4-lane road. So anyways, thank you. Thanks for listening to me. I don't want to bore you with a bunch of...
Okay, well, we do have some questions. So, Councillor Harris?
Marcel, you realize that comment was just tongue-in-cheek?
I know that. So was mine, sir.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Marcel, your suggestion was to close Dillingham. And having been involved in the approval of that subdivision back in the day, that portion of Dillingham was a connection to 92nd Street, which ultimately ran down behind some of the residents in your neighborhood. What do you think your neighbors would say if 92nd Street was opened back up? And it was always proposed to be closed for a trail link. But what do you think those quite a few neighbors south of Dillingham would say if they had traffic behind them?
I realize that no matter what you do, you're going to be in a devil of trouble. Like, there's going to be complaints every which way. I'm trying to find something that's logical in the short term and try and figure out what works. Unfortunately, Greenfield Way was built and there are no traffic impediments to Greenfield. You can get down Greenfield Way faster than South Fort Drive. There's no lights. There's no photo radar. There's nothing. So you can just open up and go.
So do you think that the recommendations, and I'm looking at them as fairly reasonable, as you said, it's a complex interrelationship of issues. We got idiots that like to drive goofy cars, loud cars, motorcycles, and they like to speed, which is a behavior issue as opposed to a functional planning issue, which we've got here. So my question is, are you prepared to try to work with these as a resident on that street to work with the city to see this thing as the next step to try to resolve the problems? And we can't change human behavior.
I like the neighborhood.
Okay.
I like Fort Saskatchewan. All my boys live here in Fort Saskatchewan. I have a long history of working and volunteering on boards and functions in Fort Saskatchewan. I've done business for 60 years in Fort Saskatchewan. Good 50 anyways. I'm sorry, not 60, but 50. Starting to date myself. One other thing, that if you take a GPS and plunk in an address, and I don't have a GPS, but I'm told it'll take you down Greenfield Way almost all the time. Even the city, when they did those ponds over on the other side of Dillingham, when they cleaned that all out, they hauled all their dirt and snow past our place, down Greenfield Way, because it was quicker.
Okay, are you good, Councillor Harris?
I am fine. That was great. You answered my question.
Thanks. You, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. So question for you. So you're talking closing Dillingham. So I'm actually looking at the map of where they're showing the improvements and things. So in your opinion, you're saying close Dillingham after the trail system that's coming east or west, I guess it is. Now, both of the properties have got garages that actually access from Dillingham onto there.
But you want to close it at that walkway, just between the walkway and 92nd there? So their garages would still have access to that little strip of road.
Yeah, so I've got to ask one other question because I have a similar recollection. Do you recall when you believe the amendment to the Greenfield Way roadway was done? Because I have a similar recollection, but I can't find it.
I don't know for sure, Mayor. I just, Madam Mayor, I apologize. I don't know for sure. I just understand that it was an amendment at some point in the structure plan, as a lot of structure plans have.
Okay.
I'm familiar with structure plans because I did a fairly large one in Strathcona, so.
Okay, so I think these will be some good questions that we'll be able to ask our administration when this is presented. Okay, so I would like to thank you for coming out. There is no other questions at this point in time.
I thank you for your time, and I appreciate the complexity of this thing. It's no matter what you do, you're going to be a goat. So.
Okay, thank you. So at this point in time, even though there is no more that are pre-registered, it is still open if anybody wants to come up, because it's still open. If you come up, you can state your name. You would have 5 minutes, but you have to act very respectfully, Evan. Okay, you can come up. No, we are videotaped. We do have a process. Your dad can come with you if you like. Okay, but I do have to respect, we are in a formal setting, and I do ask you to need to be respectful. So when you sit down, state your name, you'll have 5 minutes, and just talk to me like you're talking to me nicely, okay? And just push the button. And no, because we are videotaped, Evan. So there is a camera, and this is being videotaped. So you just have to speak normally into the microphone. Okay, so just like we're sitting, having a, I'll have a coffee and you have a cola, and let's have a chat. Okay, so you got 5 minutes.
Honestly, my opinion to put boot locks on tires. No, literally, that's how mad I am.
Okay, you just have to take your voice down a bit. Okay,
I'm steaming like coal right now.
I understand.
Like a steam train. For a steam train, I'm steaming like a coal train. Okay? And I'm very mad because some people are going 100 kilometers per hour on our road.
Okay, do you, as a young man, do you have some recommendations as well?
Yes.
Okay, nicely.
Put those spike bumps on the road and pop their tires. It's simple. Just simple.
Okay.
It's just simple. Just do it.
Okay. Other recommendations?
No.
Okay.
I'm done.
All right.
I am absolutely done right now.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming out and speaking. So the floor is still open for anybody else who wishes to come up and speak. This is going to be one last call. Okay. Okay. All right. Is there anybody else? If not, okay. So there is no further on delegations. So I'm going to ask council, because we have quite a few people who are joining us here today. Is there any objection to me moving 8.1 to our next item of business? Okay, there's no objections, so we are going to move 8.1. So I'll invite Mr. Schaefer, and during this I will ask people to be quiet and respectful. So we will actually move directly to this item so that you can hear in person what's going to happen and the questions, okay? Okay, so welcome Mr. Schaefer.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of Council. My name is Grant Schaefer. I'm Director of Fleet Facilities Engineering, and I'm here today to present an implementation plan for traffic calming on Greenfield Way. As some background, on February 22nd, Council passed a notice of motion directing administration to bring recommendations regarding traffic calming measures on Greenfield Way. At the May 17th Committee of the Whole meeting, traffic calming concepts were presented to Council along with a plan to engage property owners. Notices were mailed to residents of Southridge Estates on May 27th, with an on-site engagement taking place on June 9th. Notices were mailed to 235 property owners in Southridge Estates. The notices included a description of the raised crosswalk and on-road pedestrian zone options that were presented to the Committee of the Whole. The notice also included a questionnaire to gauge the level of support for the options presented and a section where comments or suggestions could be included. Questionnaires could be returned in person at the engagement itself or dropped off at City Hall. A total of 73 responses were received, with 21 of 50 returned from property owners who lived along Greenfield Way. Of the questionnaires that were returned, raised crosswalks received 49% support overall, with 81% support of those on Greenfield Way. Creating the on-street pedestrian zone received 26% overall support, with 33% of support along Greenfield Way. Other comments and themes that had support included constructing a trail on the south end of the soccer field, including flashing lights and bump outs at the crosswalks, close the accesses to the neighborhood, as well as do nothing and monitor the speeds now that the speed limit has been reduced to 40 kilometers an hour. After reviewing the feedback and comments, I'm here to present the implementation plan. So first, we're recommending to install raised crosswalks at the crosswalks on Greenfield Way, including the crosswalk on Greenfield Link. These will create a vertical deflection designed to accommodate 40 kilometer an hour speeds, but become uncomfortable as speeds increase. Second is to install flashing pedestrian lights at all these crosswalks, as well as the crosswalk at the trail crossing where the transition from the urban to rural cross-section occurs at the north end of Greenfield. These lights will draw attention to pedestrians crossing the roadways. Third is install bump outs at the crosswalk locations. These reduce the vertical width of the roadway, making it more uncomfortable for drivers to drive at higher speeds. The resulting lane widths remain the same, but the roadway is visually reduced. Fourth is installing bump outs at Dillingham Avenue and Greenfield, the Dillingham Avenue intersection and the Greenfield Link intersection. These bump outs visually reduce the width of the roadway, again making it uncomfortable to travel at higher speeds. At these locations, it will also tighten the intersections, making vehicles slow down and turn tighter through the intersection movements. This will make the roadways less appealing to larger vehicles and construction traffic, as it will force slower turning movements through the intersections. And finally, to construct a trail along the south side of the soccer fields. While an on-street pedestrian zone was not supported, there were many comments about the missing trail link at the south end of the soccer fields along Greenfield Way. Constructing this trail link will connect the Greenfield Way Southward Drive intersection to the trail network within the estates and provide additional pedestrian space during events at the fields. Administration is recommending Council approve $260,000 for the implementation of the traffic calming plan to be funded from the Capital Projects Reserve. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so we will go to clarifying questions only at this time. Councillor Harris.
Mr. Schaefer, looking at the results of the engagement summary, so 31% of all the notices that were sent out were returned, or we got a response on. Greenfield Way, 42%, and Greenfield Way, I guess, people that lived in the rest of the subdivision, 28%. So are you surprised that, given this is a hot button item, that we didn't get better responses from the people in the subdivision, in that kind of neighborhood?
Your Worship, Councillor Harris, as a little bit, but when I think about it, I think I understand it. It is really focused to the people who live on Greenfield Way, who experience it every day, more than the people who might live a block off and don't necessarily see it all the time.
Yeah,
And we did get a very good response rate or decent response rates from the people who actually front that area.
Yeah, and so I'm just curious how administration saw the response rates. Obviously, I think your assessment of the people that don't live on the main drag, ultimately they're just going to and from their places of residence to business and whatever. Okay. Second question. With your design of the bump outs that will be located at various locations, like at Dillingham, for example, those are going to be basically pinned onto the asphalt surface. Will it be like a raised concrete surface with rolled monolithic curb, like a soft edge curb?
Your worship, Councillor Harris, we haven't worked out the details to that depth yet. In my head, they'd be a pin on, probably a barrier face along the edges where in the direction of travel. Vertical, yeah. Okay. Vertical face, and then a roll down the edge if you're happen to clip it. Entering.
Yeah, obviously having an operational background, I look at it from the standpoint, that's an important question for me as a councillor looking at this report in terms of how you're going to do that. So you're still working on how that's going to be pinned on because you've got drainage issues to deal with, correct?
Yes, Your Worship, to Councillor Harris. So we'll look at drainage, making sure we have the lateral drainage, deal with the crown and bring it out. Our expectation is to do a mill through those areas just so that they're locked in a little bit better, but that's part of the details we're working on.
Okay, third question, last question. So with respect to the raised crosswalks, obviously that's just a large hump, basically an asphalt hump, I would imagine.
Your Worship, Councillor Harris, they're actually a flat top, so they're about 4 to 4.5 meters wide, flat top, and then slope down at both sides.
Okay. What type of material?
They'll be asphalt. Talking to our operations, they'd prefer them out of asphalt.
So if I were driving over something at speed, let's say at 60 kilometers an hour, would I have an uncomfortable ride over one of those devices?
Your Worship, Councillor Harris, I would say it would be uncomfortable. You wouldn't, I don't believe you'd get airborne, but you would definitely know you hit something.
So you're proposing that ultimately this is going to work to slow traffic down in those locations to safely navigate. And if you've done it once badly, you probably won't do it again. Fair assessment?
Your Worship, Councillor Harris, that's the hope, yes.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Noyen, clarifying questions?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Schaefer, for your presentation and for putting this report together for council. My question is, so if the motion is and the work as presented goes through, in your opinion, would it cause a traffic volume decrease over time? Do you feel it as a deterrent measure for vehicles from outside neighborhoods coming in, or would you say it's more geared towards traffic safety of any vehicular traffic on that roadway?
Your Worship, Councillor Harris, these types of measures are designed to calm traffic. Some people may be dissuaded from using them if it becomes less convenient for them because they're having to drive slower. And as well, the other piece of it is to try and remove some of that larger vehicle traffic from the neighborhood. So if there is construction traffic cutting through, making those corners difficult for them to turn means they won't come through those neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've put myself in the queue. Sorry about that. So the question that I do have, so as you were looking at these options and we see Dillingham is a real issue. So I see the bump outs that you have on there, but is there any other options that engineering would consider? I mean, we've heard some suggestions tonight. Is there anything more that we could do with that one to try and change traffic patterns, even for a period of time?
Your Worship, we're not recommending anything else at this point. There's always other options out there, but this is our recommendation at this time.
Okay. You're not recommending putting any speed humps on Dillingham as well?
Your Worship, it would be something we would look at when the trail gets constructed, as doing a raised crosswalk at that trail crossing would be another location we could do one, but until the trail is in place, it's tough to do that.
Okay. going to push on a couple other questions. So I know one issue that has been occurring since this is, I guess, opened up, and that all of us, since the school opened up, is all the bus traffic. Is there any way we can control the schools to say you're only going in there if you're picking up children, you're not using it as a collector route?
Your worship, I'm not sure how much influence we can have. I know they don't consult with us at this point when they're setting their bus routes, so I don't know that answer to that question.
Okay, and the construction traffic, I know in previous subdivisions, when it got to be unbearable, they were told the developers had to use like a makeshift road or something. Is there not something that we can do to, I'm just looking, how do we get this traffic off of this road?
Your worship, in terms of construction traffic, we do talk with the developers and encourage them to use alternate routes, those more direct routes that are to the neighborhoods rather than through neighborhoods. Ultimately, though, it comes down to the fourth guy in line who's the subcontractor to the contractor to the developer who may be coming through. So it's not always it can't always be the developer, because it could be the guy building the fence who's working for the homeowner at the same time. So we try and provide those alternate routes where we can and encourage them to be used, but it's not an enforceable action item we have.
Okay, and my next question is to Janelle. And I know you weren't here at the time. Do you recall the amendments to the subdivision plan that actually allowed for Dillingham to go all the way through? Was that amended at some point in time?
Through your worship, or to your worship, as we were preparing this report, we did look back over past revisions of the ASPs, and we found that Dillingham was first shown in a more northern location in 2003, and then ultimately in the location it's at now in 2005, 2006. So as far as I'm aware, it hasn't changed within the past 15 to 20 years.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Macon?
Hi, Grant. When you talk about asking companies or house builders or whomever to use alternate routes, what are you referring to?
Worship, the Councillor Macon. So in some cases, and this one's a little bit tough just because of where development around that area is right now, but in some cases we have had temporary roads or some kind of other trail, I guess, across a future development location that they've been able to use. We can try to get them, encourage them to use the roads that are, at least designed for that specific neighborhood, rather than, meandering through the city. Those are the kinds of things we try and do and we try and encourage, but again, it's not really an enforceable type of request we can make to them.
So my question around when we're talking about safety and traffic safety, what is your opinion on the safety of those trucks and stuff coming in through Greenfield Way as opposed to Allard Way, which is quite a bit narrower with less sight lines?
Your worship, the Councillor Mike, and I think it comes down to, in terms of the safety, it always comes down to speed and those drivers driving the speeds that are reasonable for the neighborhood. So, we have speed limits posted. A truck like that in a residential neighborhood probably shouldn't be doing the speed limit, shouldn't even be approaching the speed limit. Stopping at stop signs, doing those kinds of things. It comes down to driver behavior more than anything. We can give alternate routes, but if the behaviors don't change, it just shifts the problem.
Right. My last question is, it's just surrounding the speed bumps. So you're talking about, I know we talked about this before, creating speed bumps that are good, that are comfortable at 40 kilometers an hour. But again, I'm just going to ask, would we, rather than seeing if that actually slows it down, why wouldn't we put in speed bumps that make it more comfortable to go over at 20 or 30 right from the start, rather than, if the 40 kilometer an hour speed bumps don't work, having to go in and redo that work at a hefty price?
Your worship, the Councillor Macon, and it's, I'll answer with I guess I don't have firsthand experience, but the discussions I've had with those that do, is that so when you start putting in speed lumps that are designed for 20 kilometers an hour, it's a major impact to every user of that road living in that neighborhood, whether you're directly in front and want it or not. It becomes a lot more difficult when you're bringing in your RV or you have your sports car, your second car. Those kinds of things become a little bit more difficult to navigate. And then the other issue you have is you may slow traffic down, but you could also increase the traffic noise. You have people coming up to those speed bumps on the brakes because they see them there, they're stopping, they bounce over top, anything in the back of the truck is rattling around, they accelerate away. So you end up having to put a series of these in every 30, 40, 50 meters just to be able to be effective, to keep people down and so they're not speeding up and slowing down, and then it becomes a major inconvenience to the whole neighborhood, and then you get pushback from that side. So it's trying to find a compromise in the middle, that we can keep the speeds down where they should be, and at the same time make it livable for everybody.
Okay, thanks, Grant.
Okay, thank you. We're going around on another round. Councillor Harris.
Mr. Schaefer, so Greenfield Way is designed and was purposely designed as a rural cross-section road, collector road, correct?
That's correct.
Right, and the rural cross-section road standard is in our engineering standards manual, correct?
Your worship, to Councillor Harris, we actually don't have a rural cross-section standard because we don't typically build them. It was a one-off that was approved at the time.
Okay, so but it ultimately came from an approved design.
That's correct.
And that original approved design was what was in place in the estates of Sherwood Park, that the developer of the day and subsequently the one that worked with the Galloways to develop this subdivision brought to our department for approval, correct?
Your worship, to Councillor Harris, I'm not sure of the history on that for sure.
That's what happened.
Okay.
Anyways, I had to ask a question. So a couple of things. Sherwood Park has a road referenced as Bow Vista Drive. Are you experienced with that situation or knowledgeable about that?
Your worship, to Councillor Harris, not specifically, no.
Okay. Well, that was exactly case in point. High traffic volumes, and the county resolved the issues up there. And I was curious if you had a chance to check with the county on that, because I think we did make reference to that in your earlier presentation. So you didn't check with them, because I believe if we check on it, they've seen a resolution to the speeding problem in Bow Vista, which would be similar to this. But you have no knowledge. Okay, fair enough. So putting in large speed bumps would create a liability situation for the city. Have you checked with our insurance carriers relative to liability?
Your trip to Council Harris, speed bumps or the raised crosswalks we're talking?
I'm talking about, if we, as reference Councillor Macon's question, large ones that are a deterrent, as opposed to something that you're proposing in this particular recommendation to council today.
Your worship, the Council Harris, that'd be some discussion we'd have to have with our ledge services and insurance people. I'm not sure what the liability on that would be.
But it's fair to say it could present a liability issue if we got too heavy-handed, correct?
Potentially, yes.
Okay, good, thanks. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Noyan, clarifying questions?
Yeah, thanks. And just going back on this topic of collector roadway, I think maybe for the public record, it'd be great to hear in layman's terms what the definition of a collector roadway is. I know we've been over this and touched on it briefly before, but then what its definition is, what its use is as a piece of infrastructure, and then, yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
Your worship, to Councillor Noyan, so the collector roadway is defined by its intent of purpose. So it connects the local road network to the arterial roads. So in this case, you have Southridge Drive, which comes around, connects at both ends to Greenfield Way, and then Greenfield Way connects to the local roads within the neighborhood. So it's allowed to have local to, as a collector, it's allowed to collect the local roads and to arterial roads and to other collectors. A local road, we don't allow to collect to an arterial. So that's the distinction between the two. You do local to local, local to collector, and then a collector can go either way between.
Okay, great, thanks. And then what can you talk about the main obstacles in closing Dillingham and Meadowview connections to Greenfield Link, and perhaps why this has never been considered as a viable option?
Your worship, to Councillor Noyan, I guess it comes down to how you define what shortcutting is. And so, well, you know, is it shortcutting to go from point A to point B in a neighborhood? If my destination is the school, and I live in the Ridge, which is just the other side of the estates, is it shortcutting to use the collector to go through, or do I have to use the arterial to go around? So the industry standard definition for shortcutting is bypassing the arterial to make an arterial to an arterial connection. Sorry. So if you were connecting from all the way from the Ridge to the hospital and going through Greenfield Way and Dillingham and over to 94th Street and up, that could be considered shortcutting. But that's not I guess that's why there's a difference. And I understand there's a lot of traffic moving through that neighborhood, and it's coming from the adjacent neighborhoods to the adjacent neighborhood, but that's kind of what the roads are for. It's the same as, I would say that the 99th Avenue Ring Road is a similar example, right? You go from West Park to downtown. That's the way it goes. It's a collector road.
Okay, and I have one further question just to add to that. So is it 92nd Ave or 92nd Street? It was previously a range road behind that connects Dillingham going to South Fort. So due to the volume of construction currently happening off Meadowview zero lot lines in South Fort, is it an option to open up 92nd there and be able to reroute some construction traffic through that roadway? And it's not closed or dismantled as of yet.
Worship of Councillor Noyan. So the reason it was closed, it's always been designed to be closed and be a trail network. And the timing of it was as development happens on both sides, we start to close it as we bring it down, because those are the developers who are actually paying for the development of that trail network. So if they're not there to do the work, then the city's left having to do that work sometime in the future.
And there's no way to juggle that to rearrange the timeline for this specific scenario.
It does, and it comes down to time. And the other piece was complaints are received from the people adjacent to the trail, to what was the future trail. We, over the last several years, until we actually closed it, received a lot of complaints about why is it still open. I have traffic coming down here from different directions. So it was kind of a combination of everything on that.
Yeah, fair enough. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. I've got a couple more questions regarding the definition of the collectors that we're talking about. So when we talk about a collector on Greenfield Way as a collector opposed to any place else in Fort Saskatchewan, is there any other collector in Fort Saskatchewan that does not have sidewalks?
Your worship, not aware of any.
Okay, that's the first question that I have. I guess the next question that I have is, do you believe it would be advisable to put in a raised crosswalk also at Dillingham? If we're trying to change driver behavior, just the bump outs are not going to do it.
Just so I understand, your worship, do you mean at the trail crossing or at the intersection?
No, closer to the intersection so that people have to really slow down. Because, and if you'll indulge me, and I can do this during deliberations, I stood there and talked with Mr. Lura during the election, and there's people shortcutting through there, people that I knew that lived over in Cranston and that, and they never stopped. They just went through. So I've seen firsthand. Mm-hmm. So how do we get them to physically stop or change their behavior?
Your worship, I guess we could do something more at that intersection. It becomes more probably towards a raised intersection than a raised crosswalk. And it's just the amount that you raise. We'd have to look at it and how that impacts drainage and how it impacts the adjacent driveways and things like that, because that's not something we've looked at this point. There is no trail or sidewalk connections in that area, so you couldn't do it as a crosswalk itself, but we could look at other things within that intersection. The hope with reducing the width and tightening up the corner is that you have to stop because you don't have as much room to come through at speed.
Okay, I'll take that. I'll think about that. I'm going to go back to Janelle. So I did ask the question about collectors, because most collectors have sidewalks that people can walk safely on. How did we determine that this was going to be a collector that doesn't have sidewalks for children?
Through your worship, my understanding is back in the day when this was designed, it was put forward as a original or a unique opportunity. There were new standards introduced with this area. Those standards haven't been repeated in other areas.
Okay, if they were determined to be unique, though, what's your interpretation of those standards? Not to have the sidewalks, not to have safe walkability for people.
Through your worship, at the time it was about introducing a rural country standard into the city. It would not be my recommendation to do so in the future. I think what we've learned from this community is that pedestrian safety is a priority and it should be provided.
Okay, so my last question to you. So if we've determined that it's unsafe and not recommended for any other area, should this not be reconsidered as not being a collector and being more of an urban or a rural standard?
To your worship, I think that would be a larger conversation about how the whole area as a whole could be redesigned. For the purpose of this exercise, it was about addressing the current issues with some traffic calming measures.
Okay. I'll come to you in a second, Councillor Harrison. Last question to you then. So if this is our conversation right now, to elevate it to a further bigger conversation, what would be required? Just so that everybody knows what's required if it's to be elevated.
I think that's something that we could take away and have some further discussions about and then get back to you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Councillor Harris?
Mr. Schaefer, the width of Dillingham at Greenfield, call it from the pavement edge to the pavement edge. How wide is it in that location?
Your worship, Councillor Harris, it's around 9 meters.
Okay, so then the throttle that you'll create with this design, with those two bump outs, and a more appropriate location for the stop sign. In other words, the stop sign right now is on the right-hand side, almost in the ditch. So by throttling the traffic there is what you're suggesting that will have a natural impact because it's creating a space that restricts people's vision. Is that what your design thinking is?
Your worship, Councillor Harris, not so much to not restrict their vision, but to focus their attention, because the roadway's down to 7 meters. You're turning onto a 7-meter roadway instead of a 9-meter roadway. You have less space. The curves are taken down from right now. I think the curves along the ditch are about a 12 or 14 meter radius. We'll bring those down to a 6 to make it just tight.
So my question was, ultimately speaking, people coming off of Dillingham to turn left across the flow of traffic would have a very wide open, unthrottled area, and it would be fairly easy for people just to do rolling stops or not stop at all. Is that a fair assessment?
Your worship, Councillor, that's what we're seeing at this time, yeah.
Okay, so your suggestion is in that one particular area, we will see kind of a more throttling of the traffic, which will hopefully get to that point where they stop and hopefully don't light it up in their big boots, with their big boots and their big 4x4 diesel trucks, making as much noise as possible. So hopefully they don't do that. Would that be a fair assessment?
Your worship, Councillor Harris, that's the hope, yes.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Thank you. That appears to, well, it looks like it's all the questions. Just one last question. So if this gets approved, what's your time frame for getting this into action?
Your worship, the costing was based on contractors we already have on board, doing other work for us. So it would be through this summer. The concrete and asphalt work would be done. The flashing lights might be a little bit delayed just because we're seeing a delay in delivery. But it would be this summer, this fall is when it would all be complete.
Okay. All right. That appears to be all the questions. So I will take a motion on this. Councillor Harris, go ahead.
I would be pleased to move that Council approve $260,000 for the implementation of traffic calming on Greenfield Way and Greenfield Link to be funded from the Capital Projects Infrastructure Reserve, with the scope of the project to include raised crosswalks, flashing lights, bump outs, and construction of a trail from Greenfield Link to South Fort Drive.
All right. I'll accept that motion. Would you like to speak in favor of it?
Well, you know, I hope Council sees that I don't think any solution is ever perfect, but I think this is a good step in the right direction to resolve the complaints and the concerns that we've heard over a long period of time, and we've heard passionately from people tonight. And I think that it's, I've got a background in this area, and I think I can identify with what administration is recommending. And I think they are good steps in the right direction. I think the problem at Dillingham is an acute problem because it is such a wide open intersection. And by reducing the width of that driving lane through there and constricting the traffic in an appropriate way, I think we'll resolve part of that problem. And then with the raised crosswalks, I think that will cause people to slow down. I would have liked to have seen roundabouts in that area. And that has an obvious opportunity to reduce speed of traffic cutting through areas. It slows them down and it frustrates them, makes them go somewhere else. But we were told that the geography of the area is not such that those intersections would function well with roundabouts. So I think this is a reasonable compromise, and we will obviously have to stay in touch if this resolution passes. As it needs to be monitored, and an appropriate enforcement program has to stay in effect so that we ensure that people do adhere to the 40-kilometer-an-hour zone. I live in West Park Way in West Park, and the people that are speeding by my place on a daily basis who live in the subdivision are the worst offenders of speeding. They go by my place not at 40, not at 50, at 60 and higher. And I hope that over time, our new reduced speed limits cause a change in driver behavior. People start to say, yeah, we don't have to drive at 60K everywhere we want to go if the road's not designed for it. You asked questions about, Mayor Ketcher, about the design of the rural cross-section on the road as a collector. And I was involved as a senior manager here when that subdivision was approved. And we did consider that to be unique development for Fort Saskatchewan, to bring in larger lots so that people could have large houses with large accessory buildings. And I bet everybody sitting in the audience today has a large house with a double or a triple car garage and probably has a garage in the backyard. That was the reason for developing the amenity in that light. And so what I think we see today is we want to ensure you can continue to enjoy your homes and your properties, and that hopefully these measures will discourage the speeding, discourage the movement through the subdivision in an inappropriate way. So I would hope Council will see the sanity of this. I think administration has brought forward a reasonable set of recommendations, and I think it can move us in the right direction. Because to do otherwise would mean that we're just going to exacerbate the problem for a longer period of time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Macon.
Thank you, Councillor Harris, for moving the motion. I'll start by thanking everyone who came out today to speak and who sends us emails and who reaches out. I always appreciate hearing from everybody and really trying to understand the perspective. Marcel said that no matter what, we're going to be goats. And I had a little giggle, but I mean, it is quite true because there isn't one solution that is going to be good for everybody. And interestingly enough, when I look at some of the things that have been recommended, if we're not turning down Greenfield Way over by Home Depot in that area, and we have more people than avoiding the traffic calming and turning by Henderson Park, then now suddenly we have more people in front of Doug's house. So it seems like with everything that we do, there's going to be some wins and some losses. So I do really like what the city has proposed in this traffic calming. I think it's a good start. Whether or not you like the way it was planned, it is what it is today. And it's what can we do to force more appropriate driving in that area and really instill safety. So I do believe that what the recommendations are will force people to slow down because it will be uncomfortable. One of my childcare programs is on Georgian Way in Sherwood Park, and they implemented a lot of traffic calming that is not unlike this. And I've certainly seen the traffic there drastically change its course in the last year and a half since that stuff was implemented. So I do have high hopes for this area. Did I have any other comments on here? I have so many notes. I think that that's all I'll have to say for now, but I do support this motion, and I really hope that we can see a noticeable difference in the next year.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, I'll say thank you as well to all the residents that are here. It's been a long road to this point right now. I think Greenfield Way and the Estates is definitely a gem of a neighborhood in Fort Saskatchewan. I like its position in our community and to be able to house the type of homes that exist in this neighborhood and have that in Fort Saskatchewan is special, and it should be treated as a special case as well. So yeah, and during my campaign as well, I went through Greenfield and the Estates, and I heard this issue several times from many different residents. I think we're moving in the right direction with this. I'm looking to see some improvements towards our Vision Zero, which I think we're making some great strides toward. I just had a couple questions before closing up. Mr. Schaefer, you mentioned that it's not possible really to enforce no construction or commercial traffic. What prevents us from putting some signs that say no construction and commercial traffic and hope that something like that gets adhered to? It would be a low cost kind of solution.
Your worship, the council knowing it, and that can be done, and I wouldn't recommend against that either. It becomes my understanding of when you put the no truck sign on is if you have a destination there, you're allowed to go there. So it doesn't keep you out necessarily. It may discourage some who maybe have an alternate route. And it's definitely something we can
It might be worth a shot, yeah. Or even local traffic only. And if you're local construction, then you can go into that neighborhood sort of thing. And sometimes the signage and people reading that, I think, can go a long way. I'll just finish up by saying I do support this motion. I look forward to seeing the results. And should we have to reconsider any other measures in the future, I think the council is probably prepared to do that. I certainly am. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing some results with this.
Okay, thank you. I'll support the motion as well. I've got emails going back even last election trying to deal with what was going on this road. And I know when I was out there talking to Mr. Lura and some of the other neighbors there, it was more pronounced. And when you're standing there watching this traffic, it's sort of like when you're being told that you won't do something until later, till something else. Is sort of like, no, we need to do something and we need to do it now. So, and that's why I put the notice of motion on, to at least try and get something moving forward. So this is a start. still committed that once this work is done, if we don't start to see a change in pattern, I'll bring another notice of motion forward to bring this and elevate it even further. I agree with the neighbors, and I'm going to be honest. I sat in a meeting, and I was sure it was like in 2010, but I when the new subdivision was being brought on, and I was positive at that point in time that the residents were told there would be no impact with the subdivision that was going east of them. And that's why I actually supported the approval of that subdivision. So if it was before that time, then I was incorrect. But, you know, my biggest concern is safety. That was not designed for lots of traffic or high volume traffic. I absolutely agree with that. We do talk about quality of life for our citizens, safety, and it does need to be done. Something needs to happen. And I stand committed to continuing to work on this until we can get something resolved. So I will support this. It should get something in action, maybe having some people out there putting in those curves, and that maybe that will actually deter some of the traffic that's going on through there right now as well. And, you know, I just, you know, it's just a shame, and it is shortcutting, and I do know that. So, you know, when we talk about shortcutting, you just have to stand there for 10 minutes and watch it. So I'll end with that. I see Councillor Abatoye has joined the meeting and has now buzzed in. So she's joining us now virtually. So welcome, Councillor Abatoye, and I'll put you in the speaking order right now. So go ahead, and we are discussing the motion.
Thank you very much, and hello, good evening, everyone. Apologize for joining a little too late. I had a delayed flight, and so that's why I'm a bit late, but I was able to join on YouTube. So I've watched this meeting from the inception, and I've heard all the presentations by all the residents, and just want to say thank you to everyone who has done a presentation. Definitely have learned one or two things from you, and really appreciate your persistence. This has been an issue that has been ongoing since the previous council, and it's no small thing. Safety is a big issue, and safety is a priority for this council. And so I'm really glad to see that there have been some, plan to move this forward. I just want to say, as has been said, it's a step in the right direction. It might not be satisfying for everyone, but I do think that it is a step in the right direction. And I just want to say kudos to administration as well for, how far we've come so far. We implemented Division 0, and the 5 E's, one of the 5 E's is engagement. So I was glad to see that, the residents in this area were engaged, and to see how much response that was gotten. I know generally speaking, we never get more than 10% to 20% of response from public engagement. So it's great to see that they had even more response in their engagement. So again, like I said, safety is a priority for this council. I think that this motion is a step in the right direction. It's really important for us to monitor and review this in a year or two and see how things are going and see if there's more things that need to be done in this area. But definitely, absolutely support this motion.
Okay, thank you. I will go to Councillor Harris to close.
Yeah, I think these have been good comments, good thoughts. I think administration has done as good a job as they could with the recommendations. They say that if 50% of the people like what you're recommending and 50% don't, you're probably in the sweet spot. I don't know if that's true or not, but we have to make a decision as a council that, as Councillor Macon said, it's not a win-win for everybody, but I think that there is enough prudence here that over time we will see a reduction in the problems that are happening. I think the beauty of the subdivision is that the road is a lot wider than typically would be in a subdivision, and the lots or the houses are set back from the roadway considerably more than would be in a typical R1 subdivision. I think that overall, by implementing these recommendations, that we'll see a reduction, and it will be monitored, and we will obviously have reports from our administration over time as to the reduction in speeding and the reduction in problems in that area. And ultimately, I'm sure we'll hear from the residents one way or the other as time goes on. At least we would hope to. And so I'm hoping that this will move us in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. The motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. Okay, that is whoops, just a second. Councillor Abatoye, did you vote?
Yeah, so it didn't come up for me, so I didn't vote, but obviously I voted in the affirmative.
Okay, Miss Exley?
Your worship, the record will reflect.
Okay, the record will reflect you voted in favor. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So we're going to take a 15-minute break. So back at 4:55. So we are in recess. Yeah, she is. All right, we will resume the meeting. And the next item is a public hearing for Bylaw C22-22. So I will just explain the process as Mandy and Cherie come forward. So with a public hearing, administration will do their presentation. Administration will have an opportunity to ask questions, clarifying questions only. Following that, anybody who wishes to speak in favor or opposed will have an opportunity to do so. Those who are pre-registered will have that opportunity first, and then following that, administration will have an opportunity to answer any final questions of council. Once the public hearing is closed, then we'll go to the business arising from the public hearing. So with that, I will open the public hearing at 4:56 and invite Mandy Chan and Cherie Shindy to present. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Mandy Chan. I'm a planner 1 with the city, and I am here to present Bylaw C22-22 that redistrict lands in Southfort Meadows, Stage 9. The lands to be redistricted are in the Southfort Meadows community of the Southfort neighborhood. This redistricting application was submitted by Altera Engineering Limited on behalf of Southfort Development Corporation. Bylaw C22-22 redistrict lands as RC Comprehensive Planned Residential District and R1 Single Detached Residential District. The Southfort Meadows Stage 9 redistrict complies with the city's planning policies as outlined in the city's municipal development plan for our future. The municipal development plan designates this area as developing neighborhoods. It also articulates objectives for developing neighborhoods and sets the directions for area structure plans. The Southfort Area Structure Plan designates this area as low-density residential, as shown in yellow. Low-density residential developments typically includes single-detached housing, semi-detached housing, and multi-attached housing. The higher-level plan identifies general area for residential, commercial, parks, and collector roads. The Southfort Ridge Meadows Outline Plan designates this area as low-density residential, as shown in light yellow. The outline plan includes details such as block configurations, local road, lane, and walkway locations, and more articulated areas for parks, utilities, and institutional use. I would also like to clarify the questions from the first reading about the laneway. So please note that there is a lane located to the east of the subject plan area as shown on the slide here, but it is not included in the subdivision. This lands shown in yellow will be rezoned to R1 Single Detached Residential District. The land shown in orange will be rezoned to RC Comprehensive Planned Residential District. Southfort Meadows Stage 9 is intended to be developed in 2023. Servicing is readily available and underground utility and roads from existing adjacent stage can be extended. Following first reading, public hearing was advertised in the 4 records for 2 consecutive weeks. Notice was mailed out for property owners within 100 meters radius. Notice of the proposed bylaw was proposed on the city website and social media accounts. No written submissions or comments were received regarding to this bylaw, C22-22. At this time, I would like to answer any questions that council may have for administration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just a reminder, we are in a public hearing, so make sure that they are just clarifying questions. Councillor Harris, go ahead.
Yeah, you made reference to that response to the question about the laneway. So the laneway is ultimately servicing the street-oriented townhouse development, which is subject to a different application for development, right?
For your worship to Councillor Harris, yes, that's correct.
Right. So that would be an alleyway that would be strictly for those property owners on that. And then the access for this particular subdivision we're talking about here in that cul-de-sac, if you want to call it, is just front attached garages, so on and so forth, correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, the laneway could also serve the area that will be RC. So on the other side of the lane, basically, that block could also be served by lane.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. That appears to be the only question of the two of you. So we will go into those wishing to speak in favor or opposed. We do have Andrew Usenik from Strata Development who has pre-registered. So at this point in time, I believe you are on the line. So if you can bring him on. And you will, I'll have you state your name if you're in favor and opposed, and you will have 5 minutes, and Miss Exley will time you. So go ahead.
Good evening, Council. My name is Andrew Usenik with Southport Development Corporation, and I'm speaking in favor of the bylaw. I have a short presentation to respond to the inquiries made by councillors during first reading. Tonight's application is to zone part of our lands R1 and RC to facilitate 2023 development. By advancing tonight's application today, we put ourselves in a position to complete engineering drawings this fall and be ready for construction first thing in spring 2023, which is critical because this stage will involve a very significant scope of construction. At this time, we do not have a formal subdivision plan that has been submitted to administration. Pending the results of this application, we intend on working with our builders through the summer to determine the optimal lot size mix based on current and projected market demand. That being said, the districts we are applying for tonight are all conventional zones in the Fort's land use bylaw and are specific as to what housing types are permitted within them. For that reason, we're able to share our vision for this area now without having specific lot lines to refer to. The area zoned R1 will be a continuation of the product built across the South Fort Meadows Park and Pond that is designed for triple car garage front attached single family lots. The small section of RC directly east of that will be a new housing product for our community, single family housing with a detached triple car garage in the rear of the lot. South of Meadow Drive will be a combination of double car garage front attached single family and duplex. At this time, we do not propose including a rear lane in this section of development. However, if administration feels that a lane needs to be added once we submit the subdivision application, we will be required to come back to council to receive approval of an outline plan change to facilitate that. All of the housing products here would have a traditional side yard on both sides of the dwelling, as urban character zero lot line housing product is not permitted under either of these districts. Finally, at first reading, there were questions from council regarding the construction of Southridge Boulevard to Greenfield Link. It is our intention to build the full extension of these roads to connect to each other with this stage of development. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up for clarifying questions. I'll just start by saying that was my clarifying question about the future collector road. So that would be constructed in 2023?
Pending we went forward with construction of this stage. At this point, we're unable to predict the market conditions in 2023, but we're hoping the housing market is still robust enough that it justifies additional development.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris, clarifying questions?
Yeah, a couple of clarifying questions. Picking up on that, Andrew, I don't know if you heard our earlier discussion about the estate lots to the north and how people are using Greenfield Link, in their opinion, as a shortcut up in and out to South Fort Boulevard. So when you develop Greenfield Link, market conditions obviously going to dictate that. You would, as a developer, believe that that will help to move people down that way onto the future extension of whatever that road is? Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Meadowview Drive, as it exists today, is a collector road that is used quite frequently. But creating a second collector road with no interfacing with any houses will logically be the fastest way to access our subdivision. And typically, what we found is all drivers will typically use the path of least resistance, for lack of a better term. So at least when it comes to our subdivision, I would assume that a large bulk of traffic will use that as their preferred route just because of the ease.
Okay. And my second question goes to looking at the map that's on the screen. You were talking about that small section of would be single family with triple car rear garages. I don't think I've seen that anywhere. Example that you could kind of help to illuminate where we might have seen or see some of that type of product, recognizing you're still in the development phase as far as that is concerned?
You know what, to be honest with you, I don't have a specific example that comes to mind. I mean, I don't expect the actual principal dwellings to be that different than what you've seen from different lane product in Fort Saskatchewan. The only difference being that we have seen in our community through the years that there is a market demand for a larger garage, more so than some of the other communities we build in. And, you know, we try to facilitate what the market is asking for. So we're confident that there will be a market for that housing product, because it's a good mix of having an appealing front elevation on the house without a garage dominating it, but still allowing people to have the extra space that they require to facilitate either vehicles, storage, or other.
Yeah, the copy of the map in our package shows right behind there, which isn't the subject of this particular bylaw, street-oriented townhouse development with, I would presume, garages in the back there. I'm just looking, do you see any potential complication between triple car garages in the back on one side and garages on the other side? Do you see any problem in that alley?
No, that's very typical to all development, not just in Fort Saskatchewan, but across the region. Typically, anytime you have an alley, both sides of that alley will utilize that extra infrastructure to allow for additional parking in the rear, because of course that means then that all the street parking in front of those units is unobstructed by driveways, therefore providing additional parking opportunities not just for the directly adjacent residents, but houses nearby.
Okay, thanks, Andrew.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any additional questions, Mr. Usnick, so thank you very much. We will be dealing with this matter following the public hearing. So I know there are people in our audience, so I will ask if there's anybody else who wishes to come and speak in favor of or opposed at a public hearing. This is your opportunity to do so. So yeah, if you, just come up to the front here. And once again, because we are video recorded, I do have to have you state your name if you're in favor or opposed, and you do have 5 minutes, so go ahead. Yeah, push, yep, no, has to be red. Push the button. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, sorry. So my name is Doug Eastman, and I'm a resident along Greenfield Way in Fort Saskatchewan here. This South Fort Meadow Stage 9 development, as things sit in the situation I'm in, I would oppose this development because I don't see enough evidence here how this traffic is going to be routed from this next stage. Is South Fort Boulevard going to be constructed as this is being constructed? Right now, the majority of the traffic that's going back into all that development area back there is taking Greenfield Link and Greenfield Way through our States area, which is not designed to accommodate those volumes and types of traffic. We have no curbs, we have no sidewalks. So that construction traffic through there poses a big problem for us. So I guess without a clarifying question as to the infrastructure to access and egress from this stage, is that set and the timeline set with regard to the construction of this stage. So I would oppose without further clarification on how we're going to access and egress from that area during construction. Basically, that's the only point I have to make.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, not seeing anybody else coming forward. Administration could come forward again and answer any final questions. Okay, so all right, so I'll go to administration. I guess that is a question. Are you able to answer any timeframes? I'm not sure if Mr. Usnick is still on the line that he could answer anything.
To your worship, as per the staging plan we have for this area, the Southridge Boulevard and Greenfield link should be constructed before stage 9. So council approved stage 8 redistricting few weeks ago, and it had 3 sub phases, I would call it, to it. And after a couple of sub phases, this the Southridge Boulevard and Greenfield link connection should be triggered. So
Okay.
I don't know exactly which year. Would it be 2024, 2025? That I can't tell, but probably before stage 9 is.
Okay, Ms. Smith.
Through your worship, I did confirm with engineering that the underground work will begin in 22 and it will be completed in 23.
Okay, thank you. And then just the last question that I have, if we stop the development for any reason at this point in time, would that prohibit then that road being constructed? I'll try and do it in that manner. Ms. Smith, you can answer.
Through your worship, without this phase of development, the development agreement can't be finalized. So yes, it would prohibit.
Okay, thank you. I think that answers the gentleman's question as well. Okay, so Councillor Harris, clarifying question?
Well, just picking up on that thought. So ultimately, getting the development completed will create solutions to transportation problems north of the subdivision that's in question tonight, correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, that would potentially help.
Yes, good, thanks.
Thank you. All right, okay, that appears to be everything. So I will close the public hearing at 5:13 and we will go on to business arising from the public hearing.
The motions that the council to give second readings to Bylaw C22-22 to amend as presented.
Okay, thank you. Wish of council. Go ahead, Councillor Macon.
It disappeared. I'll make the motion that council gives second reading to Bylaw C2222 to amend land use Bylaw C2320 by redistricting. It disappeared in the middle of saying it. Do you want me just to say as presented? Oh, there it is. It's back. By redistricting part of Southeast Quarter 1954-22 W4M from Urban Reserve District to Comprehensively Planned District. Planned redistricted district and Urban Reserve District to Single Detached Residential District.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to speak in favor of the motion?
Oh, well, I apologize for that mess there, guys. But I will support this motion. We really do need to get the development done through here to get the roads built that we so much need to get the traffic flow properly in those areas. So as it might seem counterproductive, we do need to increase the traffic flow to then decrease the traffic flow. So I will support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's open for discussion and debate. Councillor Harris.
Yeah, with that much challenge getting that motion on the table, I've definitely got to support Councillor Macon in that one. Yeah, I think this is a logical extension of development in any new area, and ultimately there are always growth challenges associated with new areas, and I think this will move things in the right direction, the right way.
Okay, thank you. I'll also support the motion as well. I agree. You know, unfortunately, with new subdivisions or subdivisions of this time frame, until you can get those other roadways built, we continue to have issues. So the only way to get them built is to get the development up to them and then have the roadways put in. And I would probably agree once they're in, I would hopefully, you know, if they're put at the right kilometers, people will go out to them and use them as opposed to going 40 in a residential district. So I will support that. Councillor Abatoya, I've got you on my WebEx, so I can see you if you do. You can put up your hand if you do have a question or something, because I am watching you. Okay, so I'm not seeing any additional questions. So Councillor Macon on close. Oh, go ahead.
I have nothing further to add.
All right, the motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. That is carried. Thank you. You can continue with third if you like.
I'll make the motion that council give third reading to Bylaw C-2222 to amend Land Use Bylaw C-2320 by redistricting part of Southeast Quarter 1954-22 WRM from UR to RC and UR to R1.
All right, thank you. Do you have anything further to speak in favor?
I do not.
Do you any discussion and debate? Not seeing any. Anything on close?
Well, thank you.
All right, the motion is now closed for third reading. Please cast your vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. All right, we will move on to the next item, which is a public hearing for Bylaw C-23-22 to close a portion of River Lot 15. Thank you very much, ladies, for your presentation. To close a portion of River Lot 15, South Government Road right-of-way, we have Taryn Samra and Cherie Shindy presenting. So welcome. So same process as before, administration will be presenting. Anybody who wishes to speak in favor or opposed, and then following close, we will deal with business arising from the meeting or from the public hearing. So I will open the public hearing at 5:18 p.m.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. I am Terrence Samra, and I'm here to present Bylaw C-2322 that closes a portion of road right-of-way south of River Lot 15. The road right-of-way to be closed is located south of Highway 21 and north of the Southport neighborhood. This road closure application was initiated by the city. The application will close a portion of vacant road right-of-way. The road closure area is approximately 0.76 hectares. The road right-of-way is currently undeveloped and used for walking, providing legal access to a privately owned parcel, and accommodating shallow utilities. The purpose of the road closure is to consolidate with adjacent city-owned parcels, which will increase lot size, improve markability, and developability of these lands. As seen on the image in the left, Bylaw C-2322 would close the road right-of-way as seen in blue and be consolidated with city-owned parcels as seen in red. The image on the right, as seen as in purple, is the property when all lots are consolidated. The closed road right-of-way lands would assume the Urban Reserve District. A public hearing was advertised for 2 consecutive weeks. Notices were mailed out to property owners within 100 meters. Notice of the proposed bylaw was posted on the city's website and social media accounts. No public feedback was received. At this time, I'd like to answer any questions that council may have for administration.
Okay, thank you. I will ask if there's any clarifying questions. Okay, not seeing any. There is nobody who has, oh, we're in a public hearing. Okay. So we are in a public hearing. Nobody has pre-registered to come and speak. We do have people in the audience, so I will ask if anybody does wish to speak in favor or oppose to this bylaw. Not seeing anybody come forward. We will go to, there was no final questions of administration. I'll just double check. Not seeing any. I will close the public hearing at 5:20 and we'll go to business arising from the public hearing.
The recommendation is council give second reading to bylaw C-23-22.
Okay, thank you. We are giving the second and third this evening, correct?
Your worship, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nguyen?
Yeah, sure. I'll put the motion on that council gives second reading to bylaw C-23-22 to close a portion of River Lot 15 Government Road right-of-way.
All right, would you like to speak in favor of the motion?
Yeah, sure. This makes great deal of sense to consolidate and close this road right of way into one block from previously 3 blocks. So yeah, the city can proceed with more appealing attraction from developers should we make this step and move forward.
All right, thank you. We'll go to discussion and debate. Councillor Harris?
I'm not opposed to the closure of the road and the consolidation process, but can administration tell me, what do we anticipate getting? We're going to have a large block, designated urban reserve. What are we going to do with it? What's the plan?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, as per the Southford Area Structure Plan, sorry for that. As per the Southford Area Structure Plan, the lands are designated as commercial development.
Good. So as commercial development, ultimately we'd be looking at a potential intersection in that area and other commercial uses, and then ultimately it's going to be a question of a lot of moving parts at the same time.
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, I believe the intersection was approved earlier this year. And the answer to the rest of your question, yes, I think as we would get the interest, the commercial development will move along.
Yeah, so we approved the intersection earlier, but this could conceivably be a penetrator into the area that's undeveloped, call it to the southeast, correct?
It could be the beginning of the development process.
Okay.
Redistricting will still need to happen for commercial.
Okay, good, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abatoye?
Thank you for your presentation. I did have a question, but Councillor Harris asked the question. But my other question is there currently interest from developers on this land?
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoye, I believe economic development may have received some interest. Planning and development hasn't received any interests.
Okay, thank you. Definitely support the motion. It just makes absolute sense if it's going to help increase the marketability of the land. Definitely it's more profitable to the city, and I support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nguyen on close for second. Oh, sorry. No, okay, just leave it. Okay, so the motion is now closed. Please cast your vote for second reading. That is carried. Thank you. You can proceed. No, that was second reading. You can proceed with third.
I move that council give third reading to bylaw C-23-22 to close a portion of River Lot 15 Government Road right of way.
Thank you. Do you have anything further to speak in favor?
Nothing to add further except thanks for your work on this, and I think it'll be a great move forward.
Okay, thank you. Anything further on discussion and debate? Anything on close? All right, the motion is now closed for third reading. Please cast your vote. That is carried. Thank you very much. We will thank you very much. Okay, we will move down to new business, 9.1, the triannual report. Mr. Northey presenting. Just before you begin, this I believe is just for information and any clarifying questions, correct? Turn on your microphone. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship and Members of Council. I am Clayton Northey, the City's Manager of Accounting and Reporting, and I'm here tonight to present the April 2022 Interim Management and Financial Report. During the first 4 months of 2022, the city continued to manage the impacts of COVID-19 with disruptions relating to the Omicron variant. Despite this, the city was able to keep facilities open and return to normal culture and recreation programming in the year. Some of the other highlights of the first third of the year include work done on the city's 2023 through 2026 strategic plan, changes to the city's speed limits in consideration of Vision Zero, one I'll highlight here is utility billing alignment between the water meter readings and the billing dates, which will have some financial impacts. At this time, the city is forecasting an operating budget surplus of $1.6 million for the year, including $557,000 from municipal operations and $1.36 million from utility operations. Operating revenues were $926,000 higher than budget in the first 4 months and are expected to be $1.2 million higher than budget for the year. This variance primarily relates to changes to the water meter read and utility billing process that results in 24 extra days of water consumption being recorded in 2022. These are an accumulation of prior years. These would be coming out of several prior year dates when we set the previous billing regime and our previous water meter reading practices. Other variances in revenue include user fees and charges and investment income, both of which are expected to be higher for the year, while fines and penalties, largely due to traffic fines, and property taxes related to the provincial grants in place of taxes are forecast to be below budget. Operating expenses were $212,000 above budget in the first 4 months and are expected to be $162,000 above budget for the year. Snow removal costs account for the majority of this variance and relate to higher than normal precipitation and are also offset by a draw from the snow removal reserve. Other items were lower than budget, again related to the aforementioned snow removal reserve transfer. More details on the operating results are available on page 4 of the interim report or page 66 of the agenda package. The city's 2022 capital program, this is not, apologies for that. The 2022 capital program consists of 37 projects, including 7 new projects and 30 multi-year projects that were carried forward from 2021. As at April 30th of this year, 28 projects were active and ongoing. 5 projects had been completed, and 4 remain on hold. In the first 4 months of the year, the city spent $548,000 on capital expenditures and expects to spend $27.5 million to complete existing projects. More information on each individual capital project can be found in Appendix 3 of the report. Highlights from the Statement of Financial Position include changes to the Statement of Financial Position in the first 4 months include a net decrease in the city's net financial assets of $11.4 million used to fund city operations. This decline is typical during the first third of the year prior to tax collection and is comparable to 2021 when net financial assets dropped by $11.3 million. During the same period. Property taxes receivable dropped by $849,000 during the period, returning that receivable account to levels that are more consistent with the range that we saw prior to the pandemic. Deferred revenue increased in the period due to receipt of the 2021 MSI funding allocation and pre-authorized monthly property tax payments. The city has, as at April 30th, the city has a uncommitted financial reserve balances of $51.8 million, including $46.8 million in internally restricted reserves and $5 million in externally restricted reserves. The city's optimal balance for internally restricted reserves is $33.9 million. Stabilization and contingency reserves are $5.2 million over the category's 2022 optimal balance. However, this includes a $6.9 million account designated for future facilities to fund. At April 30th, the capital projects reserve was $2.4 million over its optimal balance. However, in 2022, this optimal balance dropped by $5.2 million due to changes made to the 10-year capital plan during budget deliberations. This reserve's optimal balance is calculated based on the funding requirements funding draws from it over the next 5 years as identified in the capital plan. The city is reviewing its reserve policy in the second half of 2022 specifically with a focus on optimal balance formulas to ensure an alignment with the purpose of each specific reserve. So this amount may change, is likely to change. Infrastructure lifecycle maintenance and replacement reserves are $266,000 over their optimal balance on a net basis, but this includes the utility portions of that category remaining $2.3 million underfunded. More information on the city's financial reserves policy is available on page 14 of the report or page 75 of the agenda package. With that, my presentation is concluded and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you very much for that presentation, Clayton. Councillor Harris, you're up first.
Mr. Northey, on page 5 of your report, you talk about the utility user rates. Can you expand on that a little bit? I mean, I understand utility billing, I understand meter rating, and I know the two jive. One drives the other. But how did you change it in such a way that we'd end up with 24 days of extra water consumption? Is it that they would have typically been handled in another year as opposed to in 2022? Is that ultimately what it comes down to? Maybe you can expand on that for council, because you're missing me on it.
Through your worship, to Councillor Harris, I'm going to try to explain this, and then I may ask Mr. Eamon to further explain the situation. What's happened in prior years, prior to the meter read, the radio meter read program, meter readings were collected either by a walking route or a drive-by route over several days. Because of this and because of the time that was taken to process that data, typically what would have happened in prior years is, say for your most recent June bill, the actual water consumption would have been from May. And so based on the timing, what we've done is we've aligned it. Now we are able to collect real-time consumption data. So when we issue bills now, the consumption data is as at the day that the bills are issued, which I believe is on the 24th of the month. So what that means is when you're receiving your June bill, it actually is for June consumption. What's happened in the past is, in order to do this, because of the gap between those differences in the past, what's happened is over time, over a number of years, we've lost consumption days in a particular calendar year, and this change catches that up.
So in the past, people would have paid for their consumption, but it was just a question of timing.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be collecting more from people unless they use more.
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, that's exactly correct. It's just a timing difference.
Okay, so the assurance is that we are more accurate and timely in relation to our meter reading billing.
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, that's correct.
Okay, good, thanks. Good deal.
Thank you. Just before we move on, are we able to have the people on the screen on live? Or maybe we are, I don't know. I had it on WebEx, so maybe they were on there. Okay, no, I'm good. My apologies. Councillor Noyan, you're next.
Yeah, thanks. Just further to this utility topic. So we're catching up approximately, I think you said 24 days or something like that from water consumption and distribution costs that the city has absorbed due to the lag, and then not having those bills gone out to residents to pay them. Is that kind of how it works? Or so we've kind of given away maybe 24 days of free water and water distribution is what, would that be correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Noyan, no, it's not that we've given away any water. It's just really a timing difference in when we've billed the water or when we've recorded the water in our financial statements. The water that we've sold hasn't changed. The water that was consumed hasn't changed, and the amount of water that we've purchased hasn't changed.
It's just purely the lag of in billing times, and then thanks again. I got a little bit confused there. I know you explained it once already. My other question has to do with Appendix 3. It's capital projects. I'm just wondering, we have a few projects here: Veterans Way, pedestrian crossing, culvert replacement for Township Road 542. It's showing that we have incurred expenditures to date with this, even though these projects were not approved in the last budget. So those expenditures, I think 109,000, 67,000, are they administrative costs for still evaluating these projects for a future budget year, or what are those costs?
Through your worship, I would have to respond to you specifically. I believe with the culvert replacement in particular, there was a portion of funds were approved for planning, but I'd again ask possibly.
And that would make sense. I think for engineering and research, right? We probably spent that much, and then for what Veterans Way pedestrian crossing is probably the same planning cost for presentation.
I believe that would be correct.
Okay.
It would be preliminary planning costs that would have been incurred.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Macon?
Thanks for your presentation, Clayton. I know that I wrote down a ton of questions as I was reading, and they were all promptly answered as I continued to read. So it was a good report, and I appreciate that. The one question I had that just came out of your presentation today was just on optimum balance formulas. You talked a little bit about looking into that. What are we doing right now? Do they fluctuate right now, or have they maintained the same optimal balance throughout? I guess depending on which reserve.
Through your worship to Councillor Macon, the way the formula works right now, particularly with capital projects as an example, it's tied to the 10-year capital plan. So when council makes changes to it, the 10-year capital plan, the optimal balance reflects that. Typically, we will only show that update twice a year, once after when the annual budget is approved, and then again we'll update it in our reports after the tax rate bylaw is approved.
Okay, and so sorry, what about the other reserves that we have that aren't linked to capital?
Through your worship to Councillor Macon, different reserves, each reserve has its own funding formula or optimal balance formula. In some cases, in the case of financial stabilization reserve, the formula is based on a percentage of the operating expenses included in the annual operating budget. Other reserves for replacement of assets follow a couple different formulas and are moving towards expected timing and replacement, so that we have sufficient funds to pay for replacements when they are due for replacement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you, Mr. Northey, for your presentation. I just have three small questions for you. And my first question was, I'm not sure this is a question for you or for Ms. Cowie, but when you're talking about your operating highlights, the first thing you had talked about was return to normal for culture and recreational programs. And my question is, are we fully back to 100% capacity before COVID hit? And yeah, that would be my first question.
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoye, I'll defer to Ms. Cowie for that.
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoye, I would say we were back to 100%, if not more, at Harbour Pool. Fitness has been slower to return at the DCC. I would say we were back to 100% with our rentals at arenas, and we're now offering day camps this summer, what we haven't offered in the last couple of years. And as you know, we've adjusted our childcare hours. So I would say we're pretty close.
Thank you.
Through your worship, if I can just add, I would also point out that our admissions program registration rental fees are all over budget, higher than budget this year, which reflects that.
That's good to know. Excellent, thank you. My second question is, you had mentioned regarding Torresfield that is now home to Edmonton Elite Football Club. And my question is, does that help us increase the cost recovery for Torresfield, and what does that number look like if we have it?
Through your worship, I'll again defer to Ms. Cowie.
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoye, I don't have that those numbers specifically in front of me. It does help with our usage rate. Last year they just did their practices with us, and this year they're doing their games and their last year was just games, this year is both games and practices. And because they're a not-for-profit organization, they pay a different rate. So it's helping for sure, but I don't have the specific numbers for you.
Okay, thank you. And my final question, and this is not a Ms. Cowie question, this is definitely a Mr. Northey question. Regarding the reserves, I do remember from the previous council that we had a program where we were trying, because with our reserves were really low, and we're trying to ensure that they were all at their optimal balance. And based on the reports you just gave to us, it seems like they are all well within their optimal balances. And so I know you had mentioned that we're reviewing our reserves policy, but is this program still ongoing?
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoye, I'm actually going to refer this one to Mr. Eamon tonight.
Okay, for sure.
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoya, I think you're just to clarify your question. You're asking if the plan is to continue to increase reserve contributions so that the optimal balances are achieved, and the fact that we are close to optimal is what we're reporting today. I think we'll continue to review that. That's part of the review and update of the reserve policy. Again, as Mr. Northey mentioned, relooking at the way we calculate those optimal balances. We may find out that in some cases, some reserves are not in fact at their optimal balance. So we'll have to take steps to correct that. But I think the program has worked very well. And obviously, as we continue to buy assets, that those optimal balances will change. But yes, it's something we're definitely looking at.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions going back to the utilities water. So you're saying you're going to you're predicting a $1.2 million surplus for this year. That's your best guess at this point in time?
Just through your worship to, your worship, at this point in time, that's what we're forecasting for utility user rates. Most of that has been captured. Most of that would be captured by the extra 24 days. There is an additional, the other item that is impacting that user fee that would be ongoing. We won't see the impact of the 24 days further in the year, but the one other thing that is we have seen is an uptick in usage of bulk water sales at our facility. So that is also increasing throughout the year and is related largely to construction.
Okay. So then my next question that I have, so if we had an indicator that this was going to be happening, or when did we kind of determine this was going to be happening? And I understand this is triannual report, but if we saw this as a trend, could we not have made any adjustments to our budget before we approved the final budget?
Through your worship, this again, I'm going to try to answer this one, but I may ask Mr. Eamon to step in as well. This is very much a one-time increase on paper, is what I would describe it as. Not something that would be reoccurring, and we probably would not want to. It wouldn't be advisable to make a change to the budget based on this one-time change.
Okay. And then I guess the other question that I have, with all the rain we've been getting, do you not anticipate water usage for lawns will be significantly down? Other than from Councillor Harris?
Your worship, that is absolutely true. However, that change would also be offset by, or that variance would change from the forecast would also be offset by a corresponding reduction in the water we purchase, so that those costs would mostly offset.
Okay. No, I'm good with those answers. Thank you. Okay, it doesn't appear that there's any final questions on that. So there is no motion required. So thank you for being here tonight and giving us the triannual report. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
And the next item, we're just going to keep pushing through. Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Just a second, I can't read this. Municipal Asset Management Program. Stuart Gerber. And I believe you are in asset management. I'll have you push your button.
Yes, I am.
All right, good. Well, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Worship, members of council. I'm Stuart Gerber, your asset management advisor for the city. The reason I'm here today, is that clear enough, is because I'm seeking your approval to go after a grant from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities as part of their municipal asset management program for $50,000. They require a motion from City Council supporting the asset management initiative within the city. The goal for the money is that we're going to use a portion of it for the actual software costs for the project, staff training and consulting services, and developing asset condition ratings to support the initiative. As defined by their guidelines, we can only use 50% of the grant money for the actual software component. So we're allocating money to other components of the project where we feel we need to really push forward with. That's it.
That's it? Okay.
it.
Are there any questions? Mr. Gerber? Oh,
yep.
Sorry. Okay, I've got Councillor Harris and then Councillor Abatoye.
Okay.
Mr. Gerber, I think if we can apply for any grants to help offset any of our costs, that's a good thing. I was under the impression that we had previously applied for grants, but if we hadn't, then this is a step in the right direction. So my question is, if we were at full pool, 100% fully integrated utilization of an asset management system and process for all of our assets, whatever they may be, in a perfect world, 100%, where are we? Are we at 30, 40, 50, 60? Are we at 88% yet? All things equal.
Okay. Your Worship, to Councillor Harris, to your first point, we did apply for an application in 2018 to do the initial asset management overview for the city. Within the program, we're actually allowed to go for 2 proposals. So that's why I'm in front of you again. Within the asset management world, there's several criteria that they rank us on, so we can evaluate where we are within our goals or the optimum threshold. In terms of support of city management and council, we're very far ahead. But in terms of understanding how much it's costing us to actually manage the assets, we're still relatively low, because we need to understand how many assets we have, where the money's going, what resources we're applying to maintenance and servicing. And at that point, we're still relatively low.
Okay.
We have some good processes in place for some assets, but not necessarily all the assets.
So my question was to just put it in a very simple term. If we were totally utilizing asset management the way it's designed or expected to be used, as opposed to where we are today, where are we in relation to the threshold of being a fully integrated, well-planned, well-utilized asset manager? Where are we?
Maybe Ms. Smith can answer that. She's acting.
At this point, I would say it's difficult to say. We have more work before I could give you a quantifiable number.
Just kind of a rough estimate.
Through your worship, maybe if I can answer this. On the FCM's asset management readiness scale, I think that we would still be scoring a 1 or 2 out of 5 at this point.
Okay, that's a good indication. So ultimately, this software, this grant will ultimately help us populate all the data, all the information we need to be able to get to a 5.
Through your worship, I would probably target a 4 at this point as being a realistic goal. We would, to get from a 4 to a 5, you would really have to evaluate whether the cost associated from going from that level is justified for an organization of our size.
That's a good response. So our target right now is 4. Okay, good. Good luck.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abatoye, go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm pretty sure that Councillor Harris saw my cheat notes here because he asked my questions. So I wasn't really clear what you said, because I am aware that we got approved for a $50,000 grant from MCM for asset management. So can you clarify what you said? Did we get the grants or not?
Through your worship, to Councillor Abatoye, we did receive funding for the initial asset management review that we did in 2018.
Okay, great. Thank you. And the second question, so I just wanted to kind of get an update. You know, we've done the asset management policy and we're currently trying to get funding for the software. And I feel like that question has already been answered, actually. You know what? Thank you for your presentation. I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any additional questions. Go ahead, Councillor Macon.
I'll make the motion that Council direct administration to apply for a grant opportunity from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Municipal Asset Management Program grant program, and that the City of Fort Saskatchewan commit to conducting the following activities in its proposed project submitted to advance the city's asset management program: to offset the cost to procure the asset management software, to fund more asset management training for staff, and to fund consulting services for the development of the asset performance criteria.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to speak in favor of the motion?
I can. I think it makes infinite sense to use any type of grant programs that are available to help us meet our goals, and this is another one I'm glad to see that we're applying. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's open for discussion and debate. I have one question. So in the motion, it says we commit to doing this. What happens if we don't get the grant funding?
It's more. Sorry, I didn't realize it was on. Basically, we do have the money, but we're just trying to offset the costs with for the grant funding. So.
Okay. So easy to commit because the money's already there. We're just, alrighty. I like those ones.
As of last Wednesday, we were notified that they were closing the program as of July 15th. So that's why we've come forward.
Okay, awesome. Councillor Harris on discussion and debate.
Was there any funding we tried to source through the Alberta municipalities, whatever they're called now? Did we previously try to access grant funding in that regard?
Through your worship, Councillor Harris, we haven't applied, at least in my time working with asset management since 2018 for that.
AU supports asset management in some regard. Is it just protocol, policy, whatever? They don't ultimately help municipalities financially. That's kind of where I'm coming from. In other words, an alternate revenue source.
Through your worship, Councillor Harris, I'm not aware of a grant program through Alberta municipalities. They have provided a number of courses and different trainings for municipalities. So
that's good.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Macon, anything on close?
Nothing more. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close the motion as presented. Please cast your vote. That is carried. Thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation. All right, we're going to keep moving right along. Changing outline plan approval. We have Taryn Samra again and Cherie Cindy. Oh, it's not Cherie. We have Craig.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. I am Terrence Samra. I'm here to present a request for decision that changes outline plan approving authority from administration to Council. I will begin by giving a brief overview about how planning occurs, the documents we use, how those documents fit together, and how we carry out our responsibility here in the Fort. I will begin with a brief overview about how planning occurs. So, when it comes to planning, the Municipal Government Act tells us what to do and establishes a framework for that to happen. That framework is divided into 3 levels of responsibility: provincial, regional, and municipal. We live in the municipal realm, and here And it is here where the MGA sets out a hierarchy of planning documents, what those documents do, and how they should relate to each other. And as you can see, as those documents circled in red, include the municipal development plan, area structure plans, and area redevelopment plans, the land use bylaw, which includes redistricting applications, and at the bottom are development permits and subdivision applications. While the MGA tells us what to do, it does not tell how to do it. For the most part, it allows us to create plans and regulations that align with our own unique wants, needs, and characteristics. To put it in a different way, you can think of the city in terms of a house. And the MGA gives us the carpenters and the tools to build our house, as well as some general rules that carpenters must follow. The carpenters are council and the planning department, because it is them that have the authority to make decisions. In this case, the planning department also carries out the work. The tools are our statutory plans, the land use bylaw, and our administrative processes. But what the house becomes and what it looks like depends on the skills and talents of the carpenters and the quality of their tools. When it comes to the tools, the MGA lays them out in a particular order. They start out very general and become more and more specific. It's organized this way so we can get things done and achieve what we set out to do. But to be effective, we need to always look at the quality of our tools and how they relate to each other in terms of both policy and decision making. So our big ideas and vision happen at the municipal development plan. This is our highest level plan, and it tells us what our house will look like. The MDA and the MDP articulates objectives and sets out direction for the area structure plan. Our next tool is our area structure plan, which focuses on a smaller area and should start to shape the big ideas into manageable pieces. This higher level plan identifies general areas for residential, commercial, parks, and collector roads. Council is required to approve area structure plans and amendments. The next tool the MGA gives us is the land use bylaw. Council also approves our land use bylaw and amendments, and Council regularly sees amendments as redistrictings, text amendments, and refreshes. At this point, our tools become more sharper and more precise, and are designed to bring out the details within our house. And here's where decision-making shifts to administration. After the land is districted, it can then be subdivided into smaller pieces. These decisions are made by the subdivision authority, who is the director of planning and development. Once the land has been subdivided, the development authority can issue development permits for these buildings and how those buildings will be used. Another tool we use are outline plans. However, these are non-statutory plans and as such do not have legislative standing. Now, at the city, our area structure plans are very large. For example, the South Fort area structure plan is designed to accommodate a population of 21,000. As a result, the goals and objectives are relatively broad. And that has created a significant gap between the planning direction set out in the area structure plan and the decisions that council makes when considering redistricting applications. To bridge the gap, we added another layer of planning that sits between the two. And this layer is outline plans. An outline plan is a smaller area within an area structure plan. They provide finer grained details such as block configuration, local road and lane and walkway locations, and more articulated areas for parks, utilities, and institutional uses. Because they are non-statutory, they are not bound by the MGA. And the practice has been that outline plans and amendments are approved by administration and not by council. While the intent is to bridge the gap between area structure plans and the redistricting, the gap still remains in terms of council's decision making. And this is evident when redistrictings come before council. Council raises very relevant questions and concerns relate to things like snow removal, garbage collection, on-street parking, timing of infrastructure, certainty of development, housing diversity, and homogeneous streetscapes. And these concerns should be discussed earlier in the process So we want to address this, and we're looking to do that on two fronts. The first relates to our future urban lands or newly annexed lands, and the second relates to our neighborhoods that are currently being developed. For future urban lands, new area structure plans will be much more detailed and focus on a smaller geographical area. We approved the terms of reference, which will set out what this would look like and what will be involved. Statutory plans within the future urban lands will already require council decision. Since neighborhood structure plans would also be used for future urban lands, outline plans won't be required. Outline plans will be used for neighborhoods currently under development. Therefore, in these areas, decisions concerning outline plans would shift from administration to council. Public hearings would be non-statutory, and outline plan decisions would be made by resolution instead of bylaw. The next slide will provide more clarity on outline plan approval process. The following process of adopting an outline plan follows a similar approval process as adopting a statutory plan. First, an outline plan is submitted to the city and brought forward to council. Council will review the outline plan and make a decision. Will a public hearing be required? A non-statutory public hearing may be held prior to adopting a plan at the discretion of council. Non-statutory public hearings function the same way as statutory public hearings, except it's not a requirement in accordance with the Municipal Government Act. The adoption process, as mentioned before, is by council resolution rather than by bylaw. Therefore, a decision is made through a single vote rather than a formal first, second, or third reading. And finally, depending on council's decision, the outline plan is officially adopted or refused. Amendments would follow a similar sequence as outline plan approvals. Amendments deemed minor by administration will not require formal council approval and instead be approved by the subdivision authority. Administration is requesting that the approving authority changes from administration to council, as council would be the appropriate decision maker because having the approving authority gives council the ability to consider matters at a higher planning level before it gets to the redistricting stage. Given just how large and broad our area structure plans are, council rarely sees area structure plan amendments, and when they do, the level of detail is such that they will not address specific concerns that council may have. Enabling council to make decisions on outline plans will proffer that level of detail. Many questions, concerns can be addressed at the outline plan stage, which will make the redistricting approval more seamless. Planning policy can be better articulated because there's a closer association between the outline plan and policies within higher statutory plans. Council can see how planning policy is translated from statutory plans or statutory plan into the outline plan. And last, and probably most important, the process provides transparency and accountability. Decisions will be made public, and council can ask of administration at the appropriate step in the overall planning process. UDI was consulted regarding the change of approving authority. UDI did not have any concerns, but they wanted to ensure that council had an understanding of the outline plan process. And at this time, I'd like to answer any questions council may have.
Okay, thank you. I put myself down first for questions. So explain to me how it works right now. Developer comes in and they sit down with administration and they work on these outline plans. So if you're doing it anyway, so when do we actually get involved? Because my question is, so if you bring this to us, all of a sudden we don't like a street, are we doing the negotiating here?
Your worship, so the current process right now is a developer would say wanted to make an amendment to an outline plan or wanted to submit an outline plan, it would come to administration and the subdivision authority would be the approving authority for this one. As for if it came to council and there was a slight amendment that would be required, I'm actually not too sure on how that would work.
Your worship, yeah, the process right now, it basically would mirror the process that we put in place for neighborhood area structure plans within the future annexation lands. Because from a policy perspective, they're almost identical. The only difference would be one is statutory and one is non-statutory. It would make sense that we would bring the outline plan approval to council. So it would be consistent with the thinking behind the adoption of area structure plans and the neighborhood area structure plans.
Okay, and I understand that, but I'm just trying to get through. So you're going to do all the negotiations and then bring it forward to council just for approval.
Your worship, yes, that would be correct. So right now we do have in the residential areas, there is 4 outline plans that are under development. So in most cases, what we would do is anything that council would be seeing would be an amendment to. There is an area that's not developed. What we would do is work with the development industry to see if they would in fact want to do an outline plan for those areas. We would go through the process exactly the same as we would go through with a neighborhood structure plan. We would also proffer the opportunity for them to submit a neighborhood structure plan, which would have that statutory authority behind it. Essentially, they would be the same thing. They would both come to council for adoption. It's just one has standing as a statutory document, the other one does not.
Okay, I'm just trying to clarify because when you're saying you want our approval on it, you don't want us negotiating of what we like or don't like. You just want us to endorse basically what you've negotiated.
Your worship, yeah, that's correct. We would go through quite a bit of work dealing with the applicant, the developer in this case, and we would bring a recommendation forward. It does provide the opportunity to give some context to council. If I was a developer, I would think that council would have an understanding of the outline plan before it got to redistricting. Some of the issues that we were talking about earlier today, I think would be some example of that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris?
Are you aware that this is the way it used to be up until about 2003?
It wouldn't, through you, worship, to Councillor Harris, it certainly wouldn't surprise me. It is pretty common within the region and throughout Alberta to have plans at this level approved by council.
It was the way it was, and I sat in your chair, more or less, maybe Ms. Duguid-Smith's chair, and convinced council that we should change that so that administration would do it. So now you're suggesting that council is more engaged. So it leads to my next question. So do you see this as an iterative process of council being not just something dropped on the table, what do you think, but maybe a more iterative process, maybe something that happens through our committee of the whole meetings where we receive information about these things so that we can kind of maybe chew on things? Do you see it as more of an iterative process with a conclusion where a decision is made at this table?
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Harris, that is certainly a possibility. If that is the wish of council, that is something we could take back. Given how a non-statutory decision in this case, I guess, would work, and it would be at the discretion of council to have a non-statutory public hearing. In my mind, it probably would make some sense to bring some information forward at a committee of the whole. The only thing that I would see as being maybe a negative is it would add time to the process.
That's kind of where I'm getting to, because ultimately any time that we're having iterative kind of processes, it does expend timelines. We can discuss that when we get into debate, but those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Batoye?
Thank you for your presentation. I definitely support anything that promotes more transparency and accountability. My first question, though, is, and I really agree with what Councillor Harris said about the Committee of the Whole. Is there any urgency to this this work going forward today? Is there a timeline issue that you're working with and having to approve this today?
Through you, Your Worship, Councillor Abatoye, I would say generally no. I think the intent behind it is we feel it is good governance and good practice, and it does also mirror our process that we've got in place with our neighborhood structure plan. So it would mirror that process. However, again, if it is the will of council, we can take it back and consider any suggestions that council may have.
Yes, no, I'd really appreciate having a fulsome conversation about this, because I think it's going to be a big change. I think that Andrew in his presentation today had said that if administration was going to change anything on that plan, then it would have to come back to council for approval. And so I think if this passes today, then that's what's going to happen. And I'm not fully sure, but it kind of feels like it's going to be adding more red tape to the process. I know we're not in debates, but my question is, so considering this new addition, what does it do about timing? Does it elongate the process for the applicants, or does it shorten it, or does it leave it as is?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Abatoye, I would probably guess that it may add a week or two. Typically, if we're going through, I guess there's two scenarios. One would be the submission of a brand new outline plan. A process like that does take a considerable amount of time. It could take, I've never gone through that process in Fort Saskatchewan, but I know in other municipalities it could take several years if necessary. So when we're dealing with that, a week or two is not going to be significant. It is a process where we're adopting a significant planning document that will provide direction for a fairly long period of time. So it is important to have that transparency and good, effective decision making. When it comes to amendments, often amendments come. Outline plans are amended because it's going to facilitate a change in a future subdivision and a redistricting. A lot of times, or most times, that planning is done during the year when they're not actually actively doing construction. So that could be facilitated. And again, I think it does provide context at a point in time when the redistricting is before council. So it does provide some clarity and perhaps some certainty for the developer as well. Just for reference, I think in the past year we've dealt with 3 amendments to outline plans.
Okay, so I don't disagree with a lot of the comments you've said, but when I hear things like the outline plan goes into finer greater details, right? And it's not statutory, and it's not going to be governed by the MGA and all of that, and it just brings out questions in my head. And I really like an opportunity to be able to discuss it in the committee of a whole rather than approve this today. And that's just my own comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thanks. So my question has to do with differentiation between major and minor amendments. And the reason I'm inquiring into this subject matter is because it's not entirely clear with me what we could see or not see coming back to us in amending outline plans. So it seems to me that because it's non-statutory, the developer could potentially come back an infinite number of times to planning and development to make what are considered major changes if they, and we've heard this many times before, if they have an understanding of market trends that just start going in different ways. Can you give me a little bit better understanding of maybe like and in your experience how many times we would expect the scale of an an outline plan to be coming back to council for review?
Through your worship to Councillor Nguyen, that's I think a very fair question. Again, like in the last 12 months, there was 3 amendments, and that's probably considered to be fairly busy. I would say, you know, you would probably expect 2 or 3 or possibly 4, depending on the type of development that's happening in the community and the pace of development. One thing that's important to note, I think, is there is certainty for the developer, but there is also certainty for the folks that are going to be living in the neighborhood. And if they are choosing to live in the community, they'll often want to look at the outline plans to see how the neighborhood is going to develop out. It's important, I guess, to go through that process. And you know, especially from a governance standpoint, that there is that accountability for the residents as well.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, yeah, I'm just kind of trying to visualize how this is going to work. So my second question further to that then is, because I think you mentioned there are currently 4 outline plans that are requiring amendment right now. So is that the correct number?
Through your worship, Councillor Nguyen, no, that's not true. We don't. We're right now. There's 4 outline plans that are being developed within the residential areas.
Okay, thanks. So are we going to see outline plans coming towards council, like kind of as a consolidated topic of discussion within a couple months prior to January of every new year, when the redistricting is taking place? Is that kind of what we can expect to see, or will it be throughout the year where we're going to be addressing and readdressing these?
Through you, worship to Councillor Nguyen, no, I mean, I don't think we'd specifically be able to predict.
Yeah.
Again, like an outline plan would be amended if there might be a trend, you know, or a change in development trends or something like that, and that would lead to the developer maybe changing the orientation of a street or something to that effect. But generally the idea is they would stay constant and they wouldn't change significantly over time.
Hopefully. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll go back to you, Councillor Harris. Last question, and then if you want to put the motion on, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Thomas, let me give you a hypothetical. Earlier this year, we had a situation where in West Park, a developer wanted to change the orientation of lots from rear-facing to front-facing. Administration had been working on it diligently, thought it was a great idea, made it align with our MDP and our ASP and all that sort of stuff. When we found out about it, I felt that we got blindsided because the long-term development context for that area was always going to be all rear-facing lots onto West Park Drive. So would that negate that happening so that we would be aware of that coming forward? In other words, the developer is proposing a major amendment to change from this to that, and to address that, they're going to do this, 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 and this. So you would obviously, as administration, you're technically competent. So you would review it, correct? And then ultimately would come to council if we approve this, and then we would be more plugged in to that particular type of change, which I saw as a very significant philosophical and policy change.
So I heard 3 questions there.
Well, he's a smart guy. He'll figure it out. So will that plug us into the decision-making process in a better way to be better informed for the future planning of our community? Bottom line.
Through you, Worship Councillor Harris, I think that's a great example in many ways, because it would offer council the opportunity to debate that change, notwithstanding the recommendation that administration brings forward.
Okay.
So in that particular case, you know, it was a change, and we went right up to the municipal development plan in consideration with that change. But as it stands currently, administration would approve or accept that change based on our statutory documents. Council may have a fundamental disagreement with that approval, but you wouldn't have the opportunity to deal with that step in the process.
Okay, so then we end up with kind of convoluted planning, correct?
Well, through your worship, once it would get to the redistricting stage, you would be debating the question of the orientation of the lots when that decision has been made. It would be up to council to, council would have the ability to make a decision on the redistricting because of that. But in terms of the flow of planning, that decision making would have already passed.
Okay, good. That answers my question. With that in mind, I'd be prepared to make this motion, and we can debate it, discuss it. I acknowledge Councillor Abatoye raised a really good point in terms of whether we need a little bit more discussion on this, and given the fact that two of our colleagues are not here today.
Okay, would you like to put the motion on?
Yeah, with that said, I'd be prepared to move the motion, at least to get it moving. So I would move that council approve a change to the approving authority for outline plans from administration to council.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to speak in favor of it?
Anything that doesn't bog the process down, but ensures that we are making informed and cogent decisions from a council perspective about the future of our community from a development perspective, I think I fully support it, and I would be surprised if anybody else sitting around this table doesn't feel the same way. So if this does it, that would be good. But I said earlier that I was sitting at administration table when we changed it back in the early 2000s, so that administration, and at that point in time, administration became the subdivision approving authority as well, I believe. So we took on more administrative responsibility, and the goal at that point in time was to try to improve the decision-making process and to take the politics out of it. Politics are never removed from it. As the example I gave you, I was not happy with that. And so if this can create a situation where better informed and we make more timely decisions, then I think that ultimately is our job as elected officials.
Okay, thank you. It's now open for discussion and debate. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thanks. And I think this could be extremely valuable to this council, as we've seen since January with redistricting and a few of the developers bringing us drawings of what the conceptualization of a neighborhood should be. So being involved in the process of creating and amending the outline plans, I think is going to be maybe ease the process of our understanding of what the big picture is, right? And that's what we're going for. So I appreciate you bringing this forward. And other than my questions and a little bit of confusion on my end to know what this is really going to look like when it comes down to it, I love the concept and looking forward to getting off to the races here.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abatoye on the motion.
So I do support the idea of the plan, but I feel like this is, except I'm wrong, is this not the first time it's coming to council?
Your worship, to Councillor Abatoye, I think May of 2021, I believe, I had brought this forward to the committee of the whole for information.
So why did it take so long to come back to council then?
Your worship, to Councillor Abatoye, timing was a big factor. I think we had a number of redistrictings that we wanted to deal with before we wanted to bring this forward to council.
Okay, it's been so long. I don't remember having this conversation. I feel like actually one more question. So I just looking at the letter that UDI wrote, something about ensuring that the public hearing process is as seamless as possible. What is there an impact to the public hearing process? Because I mean, there will be a non-statutory public hearing as a result of this, right?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Abatoye, if a amendment or a new area structure, or sorry, outline plan is brought forward to council, because it is non-statutory, it would be at the discretion of council whether or not they'd want to have a non-statutory public hearing. My suggestion is it would be a very good idea to hold a public hearing in that case.
Okay. I'm really struggling to remember that conversation we had at that COW meeting, because it almost feels like it's new, but like I said, I support the idea of it, but I feel like, it would be nice to have this conversation at the next COW meeting. But again, now I'm conflicted because he said we already had that conversation, but I just don't remember. Please come back to me.
Okay, we're going to close. Whoops. Okay, so there's no more, nobody on the list for discussion and debate, so I'm going to go to close then. Well, I can't come back to. So do you have anything else before I close then?
I would like to put an amended motion on the floor to defer this to the next COW meeting.
If I may, Your Worship, so it would be a motion to postpone. Would be
okay. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, so we'll deal with the motion to postpone.
We'll get you some options for committee of the whole dates in a second here, Councillor Abatoye.
Yeah, just the September COW meeting should be fine. I mean, if there's...
Okay, well, you're working on the motion, postponement motion. Do you wish to speak to your postponement motion?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, I think this is, I support anything that promotes transparency and accountability, as I said before, but I feel like we've not really had a conversation about this, even though we did a year ago. I don't remember. And as it was said, two of our colleagues are here. I know that we still have to move business forward, but Mr. Craig has confirmed that there isn't a time sensitivity around this matter. So I would really like the opportunity to have a conversation about this and before we go ahead and make a decision. This approval, even though, again, like I said, it seems like a good idea, it's going to be adding time to the whole process, so I think it's important for us that we look at both the advantage we're getting as a result of this and what kind of setback is it going to be bringing as well. So for that reason, I think that it will be great to have a fulsome conversation at the next COW meeting, and then before we go ahead to approve it.
Okay, so we're going to deal with the postponement motion. They'll put it up in a second with a September committee of the whole date on it. So we will go into discussion and debate on the postponement motion. Councillor Harris, did you want to? You were on there for close, but.
I appreciate what Councillor Abatoye is saying, but I'm comfortable with moving forward with this tonight. What I would almost expect coming out of that is, as I talked about, is an iterative process. Our administration would give us a little bit more opportunity to discuss it. So if that happens at the next committee of the whole meeting, with the understanding that we're just seeking more clarification on process, what we're considering tonight is the way the city used to do it for many years, and it was fine. Administration at that point in time thought we could do a better job administratively and less politicking, and that's why the change was made at that point in time. So, I'm prepared to move it on it today. and just get on with it. And I see it as something that if it didn't work, we can deal with it. If it works, it'll work.
Okay, thank you. On the postponement motion only, Councillor Macon.
I'll support the motion. I mean, I am prepared to support the main motion from today, but as it's not time sensitive and a member of council has asked for more information and more time to discuss, I don't have a problem with that either. So I will support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I won't support the postponement motion. I think we've had a great conversation about this in the past and knew it was coming. It has been available in our package for us to read. We have had an opportunity to ask questions, and I think I would just like to see us start getting our business done, and we can conclude it for the year, or for up to the summertime. So I won't be supporting the postponement motion. Councillor Abatoye, anything on close on your postponement?
Nothing further. Let's vote.
Okay, thank you. So on postponing, please cast your vote. So the motion is defeated, so we will just go ahead with the main motion. Councillor Harris on close. Push your button.
No, I think we've talked through it. I think administration is now, or probably was always aware that this is something, it's a change in process. We're going to have to get used to it. We're going to have to find a way to ensure that it does not elongate the development process, but that we make informed and timely decisions. And I hope this will do that.
Okay, thank you. The motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. Motion is carried. All right, thank you very much. Are there any notice of motions this evening? Not seeing any. Are there any points of interest? Not seeing any. Councillor inquiries. And I do have one for Miss Janelle Smith. If Troy was here, I would ask him, but what is the status again on safety of the bollards in subdivisions, given that the majority of them are never closed?
So your worship, we can pass along that feedback. If you have specific locations, that is helpful.
Okay, so my second question on that one, is there truly a need for them if council has to continuously provide locations?
Through your worship, I do believe they offer benefit. I know that they can be an operational inconvenience, which is why they consistently get left open. But I do believe there is a safety benefit.
Okay, so the ones at West Park always are open, always. Councillor Harris, inquiries?
Can I respond to your question?
After we adjourn. There are questions to administration.
I would love to think something, but I can't, and it's been such a nice time tonight. I'm just going to cut it off right there. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. And I'm told there is no need for an in-camera this session. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 6:38 p.m. Thank you, and to everybody, have a good summer, and we'll see you back at this table in August. Thank you.
What? No July? Just kidding. Nothing.